Okay, hello everyone. It is me, Settler's Lament, back with I guess my monthly live stream. Um, I'm about to start tearing myself because I forgot to mute myself again. Um, so yeah, I'm back here with an all-star cast. No, that's a lie. The only person here that matters is me and Dave. I have some other losers like let's see, how many subscribers do you have? 21st. I'm gonna check this right now.
880.
Yeah, 880. I can't believe I even invite someone like you on. Cringe Walker 300. I mean, you give me money, that's the reason I invite you on, but still. And DC, okay, 3,700. That's better than I thought, but it's still kind of yikes. Ideally, everyone on here would have more subscribers than me. Now, that does hurt my ego a bit because I'm more important than everyone else. But at least it would help get more views. So it would help more people realize that I'm more important than everyone else. So yeah, I know it's not my fault I wasn't able to get as important people as I normally get. The fault is of all the people who turned down this live stream. Apparently 24 hours isn't enough notice. So please go to Charlemagne's channel, Aaron McIntyre's channel, and John Fisher's channel and tell all those people. I mean, John Fisher isn't important, so I guess you can skip him if you want. But go to all those channels and tell them, why aren't you on Settlers Lament stream tonight? So that that's just the important business I had to get out of the way. Though I would like to point out that Zero Kev is absolutely right here. Cringe Walker is the reason I'm late today. How did Cringe Walker cause that? I'm not really sure. But I know it's his fault.
In Power Rangers SPD, which was a very good season of Power Rangers, they did this thing where they had the A cast of Power Rangers and the B cast of Power Rangers. And if the A cast was busy that weekend, they would bring on the B cast actors. And this year, this is a mighty fine B cast.
I don't even what am I supposed to pronounce? What am I supposed to be pronouncing wrong here? Aaron? Is that how you're supposed to say it?
It's Aaron.
That's the stupidest thing I ever heard. It's Aaron.
Aaron.
Aaron. Hey, oh, beat me to it. No.
Yeah. Okay. Thoughts on mold butts? I'm assuming that's referring to mold bug. Does anyone still follow mold bug? Like, how cringe are you? What year is it?
AA did an interview with him for Saturday, so
it's gonna be lit.
Did he? I saw Twitter. I wasn't sure if that was real.
He did a hour-long interview that's gonna present. I think it's this Saturday, but it might be. Pretty sure
okay.
It's this Saturday. Yeah.
Okay, I went to his channel. I didn't see it up there, so
he did a little sneak preview, but it's gonna be published on Saturday.
Okay, that makes sense. Yes, Roman name or Greek, I guess Greek name guy is correct. And true, very, very, very based. I feel like I acquire all the information I need about Moldbug from when I get emailed the titles of his articles. I definitely don't read them, but they're very based titles. So, okay. So I don't know. Is that enough of a prologue to this stream? Do I something else need to say before we actually get started with the topic? So I don't know. It should be fairly self-explanatory. I mean, I guess actually not really. The title doesn't really explain what we're doing at all here tonight. I mean, it kind of does, but it doesn't really. So what are we doing here tonight? 21st. Why don't you handle that?
Well, we're coming here tonight to talk about how Jesus loves you. Well, that's true. That's not the central topic. The topic is in response to Keith Woods, an academic agent. They did a talk together because they were having a little Twitter, debating Twitter battle about, on the side of, are we even able to use empiricism to convince ourselves of facts? How are we even able to? Is his political belief system even based on the facts, or is it some kind of residue that they are some kind of fundamental attraction to a myth that they have? And then Keith was on the side of no, we can understand this through some kind of objective lens. And so they had a whole discussion about that. I think. Do you have it linked to in the description? No, but
Yeah, no, I don't. I'll pin it. I'll pin it in the live chat, and I'll pin it in the comments afterwards.
yeah. I mean, you guys will be able to find the video pretty easily, but I think it's like a debate on skepticism between them. I think that's the title or whatever. But the conversation did go several places, but I think it was very illuminating in showing how we're having a serious problem here, in that this big tent on the right is having a very hard time figure out what we're doing here without that fundamental um theological understanding that's required. It's like I'm not some I'm not some pop theologian, or I'm not really, that's not really my milieu of interest and everything, but it just became obvious there how you know it's like, if we don't even have the same epistemology, the same purpose and moral system, it's just kind of hard to figure out these issues in a clear way. I think the general idea of the left is like some entity, like an actual tribe, and for the past century, like the modern right is just everybody that's not in that tribe, all the persona non grata, and that just doesn't really work. And it's like this big tent thing, but it's just so incoherent. I think there was actually the National Conservatism Conference. I think everybody should be familiar with that. They have a channel, I think, called like National Conservatism, where Sohrab Ahmari, Yoram Hazony, and then flanking from outside was Dave Rubin, Douglas Murray. You can get what that means, but it was the same dynamic where it's like the traditionalists that have some kind of coherent worldview there, and then people on the outside that are just in this decayed state of liberalism. They're just kind of wandering around, groping in the Platonic cave. So I think that's just the general thesis for this stream.
I feel like I was literally on one of those panels when I had that extended conversation with Adam and Sitch about a month back, which was one of the more fascinating and irritating conversations I've had in a very long time. But yeah, that's sort of the state of anti-progressivism in the modern days. People don't really know what's going on. Ultimately, I'm not so sure how much it will matter because of... I think the issue to a large degree is that we just don't have sort of... What we're running into is sort of a problem in human cognitive perception. We don't process facts one after the other. We process them sort of in order of political priority or moral priority. It would be like, asking whether humans can process facts directly would be like saying, well, can you do complex math at like a Van Halen concert in the front row? Your mind's not going to be able to do that. It will be overpowered. And when there's an active culture war and an active conversation about values, a person with a very strong free will can try to put that aside and just pay attention to the facts. But any other ordinary human, and even if you're really, really smart, you're constantly dragged into this temptation of just having your mind captured by the political battle that's going on right now. I remember this is sort of, we shouldn't poo-poo questions of fact. For instance, my religion, our religion to a certain extent relies on the question of a historical fact over Christ's resurrection. But I remember being a new atheist, and this is sort of a pivotal point in my transformation. I went to a debate, or I think I watched actually a debate with, I don't know if it was William Lane Craig, but it was someone very much like him. And he was trying to argue against Hitchens or someone like that the resurrection happened. And the person he was arguing against didn't agree that God was real, or that Christian morality was, or that the entire idea that human essence is a thing, or that there needed to be prior metaphysical concepts. He was a complete materialist. He was completely functionally immoral. And he was trying to just, dazzle him with all of these kind of tricks. And it was just, for me, I kind of realized that this is sort of a ridiculous conversation. No one converted to Christianity from materialism like this. They converted to Christianity because they wanted to come into contact with the living God, and they understood that value. And that's how their brains processed it. And I guess from that moment on, I decided to kind of like try to struggle with the concept of theism rather than just these sort of crude, material facts, I guess. And I don't want to call the resurrection a crude material fact, but the arguments for it can seem like that at some stage. And this is sort of, I guess, what my reaction going into this was just, really, Keith, in some kind of abstract computer sense, is correct that material facts absolutely make a difference. And we can't just close our eyes to reality, because most of what we know about God is we have an intuitive perception of God in an Augustinian sense. We have sort of a cosmological perception of God in the Aristotelian sense. But that's like, nothing relevant about divinity is understood that way. It's all understood through the contact with special revelation, either in our own lives or through historical record. So this is we can't dismiss facts, but at the same time, I think academic agent is correct, because he's actually pointing to how humans actually process facts. And that's not simply as a serial processor. What they do is they prioritize things in almost a political sense. Like, what's the most relevant question? The most relevant question that's overpowering everyone's cognitive capacities in the West right now is what moral system rules the world, or rules the West and vicariously the world. And until we decide about that, our ability to process actual facts is, I think, can be really, really limited, for most people at most times. So sorry for that long ramble, but that's sort of my take.
Yeah, there's an interesting loop that happens when you try to become a materialist. And I think materialism ultimately comes to the conclusion that the universe is deterministic. If you think that there's only the material observable universe, you can conclude that the universe is made of matter and energy. The energy seems to be fluctuations in space-time or something like that, but pretty much everything can be reduced down to a vector field of some kind. And if you could know every vector, you could know the future, because the vectors are predictable. They add, they subtract, and you'd essentially know the direction of every single atom in the universe. And so everything that would be possible would be determined by the mathematical value of those atoms, or even energy fluctuations, if you can get math that precise. If you could figure out the direction that every atom in your brain is going, you could probably decently predict someone's thoughts, and then you would take out free will. But there's a consequence of coming to that conclusion that the secularists might not like to think about, and that's that if that information is embedded in those vectors, you can trace those vectors back to when matter started precipitating out of the energy void after the Big Bang, which means that all of that information that resulted in you through biological processes was embedded in the information of those vectors at the start, which means that you didn't really evolve. You were just the predetermined endpoint of atoms bouncing around and interacting. All of that was predetermined because the vectors can be calculated.
You are the boundary conditions of the universe.
What?
You are the boundary conditions of the universe, right? The universe had some input conditions on the boundaries, and it's just this is the consequence of the equations working out.
Yeah, so in some sense, materialism becomes self-destructive, because now you have to face the reality that everything that you see around you is predetermined and essentially fixed to the original data points. Once those vectors formed out of the cosmos and those atoms started traveling around and interacting, you were the inevitable consequence. Evolution is more of an illusion than a reality. It describes a predetermined outcome, which kind of you self-destruct your own godlessness, because now you have to ask yourself, where did those vectors come from? And you could go with you can cope really hard by saying it's a multiverse and you just won the lottery, but you can't actually prove that multiverse. That's outside your context. That's faith. You're getting into a realm of faith once you do that.
It also this gets into this other thing. I've made videos like this before. I mean, all of this, the arguments for materialism, and Keith Woods actually should know this because he's pointed this out. The arguments for materialism all presuppose materialism. Has anyone ever noticed that?
Yeah.
Right? It's like when you take a step back and seriously think about it, and you're not like a 13-year-old, boy or someone who's suffering from some borderline spectrum condition who's in their 30s. If you just step back and take a look at the whole process, you start laughing at yourself. We have no reason to believe that because we can model something with statistical accuracy, we necessarily know its causes. If anything, experience with computational programs in any kind of complex chaotic systems has shown just the opposite. They show that you can predict something and then not really understand how it behaves in extraordinary circumstances or going forward, or even if you can predict it perfectly, it doesn't necessarily mean you understand its origin, because a lot of times you're just dealing with sort of emergent behavior. The emergent behavior is what is well behaved, not the actual thing behind it.
So, well, yeah. Oh, did you flush the toilet?
No, that was you. That was
Sorry,
you.
I dropped a pen.
DC, what do you think of it?
I mean, yeah, I think you guys are correct about materialism and the position that Keith Woods is holding and Academic Agent both. I think, honestly, I don't like arguing with presuppositional like points. So even when evangelizing, which is really where I come at it from, and I don't think that's a proper way to go about doing things when it comes to the Christ conversation as well. Though it can help, but I believe that, of course, the answer is no. The right wing can't sustain itself without God, because we do need a point to go off of to agree on, like you guys were talking about. I think it was 21st mentioning, the left is a coherent tribe with rigid ideas and rigid structure, and we're just kind of a conglomeration of the not tribe, the others, right? So yeah, I don't know if I can get as like metaphysical with it as you guys. You guys are far above and beyond me at that point, but I'd say I agree with what you guys are saying. Yeah.
I wanted to point out, someone in the chat was saying the Heisenberg uncertainty principle, and this is a cope in my opinion. The Heisenberg uncertainty principle predicts that you can't get the data, because if you try to find it, you can only predict the exact location or exact vector. You can't get both. But that doesn't deny that the information is there. It just declares you can't get it. And this is something that a lot of like secularists have the problem of, like understanding reality versus conception. Like, just because you can't get the data doesn't mean the data doesn't exist. Like, it's still there. You're just incapable of getting it.
Heisenberg, author of a theorem, one of the most abused theorems. His theorem was more abused than the nuclear bomb he was trying to build for Hitler would have been.
It's very annoying when I see like people say, "Oh, uncertainty principle, so you can't know." It's like, no. You can't know because you can't acquire the data. You can't. It's not that the data doesn't exist. And this is something like, I don't know why people have this challenge understanding it. Like, there exists data that you cannot acquire because of the methods by which you.
No, I think actually, did I lose you guys?
No, you're here.
Yeah, no, I think
I do believe. I mean, to be clear, the uncertainty principle is actually a statement of reality. The electron does not have a defined velocity and position at the same time, and it can't. So it's not.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess it's. I don't know. It depends on what we were calling data and what we're calling reality, but it does describe sort of an incredibly counterintuitive proposition, not simply a limitation of the instrument.
That has to do with the theory that's a probability wave, which itself may be I mean, it makes sense based off the data, but like, yeah, when you're using particle physics, right? It's just like you're using a convenient tool. It doesn't actually describe what's actually happening. It just does enough work to get a decent like prediction model.
So, Dave, when you were talking about getting out of the new atheist phase, going through the fire and water to struggling with theism, how did that transition happen? Was it, some cold, hard, logical reasoning, or was it trauma, or was it some kind of, illumination of your mind?
I don't really have a super sexy conversion story, but I do parlay in other people's conversion stories that are more interesting than mine. I've written about some of them in my blog sometimes. No, I don't really have a super sexy conversion story. It was more or less just transitioning from atheism to deism. I was one of these super smart deists. I was an atheist in early college, and then I became like this, Aristotelian, because I joined a great books club, and And then I kind of followed along this new atheism versus atheism debate all through when that was popular, and kind of ended up in Catholicism through a variety of small little steps.
Right. Well, I was so wait, but you're saying in the book club, so you kind of ended up in deism. What I'm trying to get at here is like, people kind of end up in positions rather than logically reasoning into them. They just kind of fall into it. So,
I mean, the first step is to realize materialism is bullshit. Like, I mean, that's just like the first step. And I don't know if you're a materialist, then I don't know why you're going and debating the resurrection, right? Because the resurrection may be true, may be false. I believe it's true, but it's not a material. I mean, I guess it could be a sort of a probabilistic, sort of thing, but it's not a material thing that I think is. It's a material outcome, but it's not something that makes sense under a materialist. You run into the sort of the Humean paradox there, right? Did I kill the conversation? I'm sorry.
No.
Please describe the Humean paradox, because I'm
the
ignorant.
Humean.
David Hume was, I don't know if he was a materialist, but he was one of the first sort of methodological atheists.
Yeah.
Who famously said that, miracles couldn't possibly happen because they would violate sort of these essential causal principles of physical laws, which is, again, this is materialism by assuming materialism. But that was his position, and I'm sure there might be a more strong, like a more steelman position here, but that's how it's sort of crudely described, and that's what most atheists will throw in your face in one form or the other if you argue this stuff. Like if you start with I think I'm totally off topic here, but if you start trying to argue atheists into like the resurrection, you're going to run into this really quickly.
Yeah, I visited Hume's like museum, or parts of his like museums exhibits that include him in Britain, and I just found him very like. I kept thinking about there's a scene in the video game Mass Effect where this is on topic, I assure you. They're meeting like the big bad guys who are like manipulating the universe, and the like these creatures called the Reapers, and the Reapers say like, we can control you because you use the technology we give you, and so you develop along the lines we predict. And it's kind of like a great like thought experiment of like, yeah, if you take someone's concepts, you'll develop along the lines that those concepts were predetermined to come to. This is why you should always doubt who is teaching you, because you don't know what the philosophical genealogy of it is and where it's going to lead you. You should be self-aware of like where you are on that philosophical genealogy, and investigate where it leads to, and make sure if you're necessarily so objective. But like
this was easy in the time when parents taught children or when communities taught children, because the community would have a common religion. But now we have sort of mercenaries teach children, and this is why we're having these problems with, the dreaded CRT, right?
Yeah, but CRT is just like the most recent of a long line of these problems going.
No, it's well, oh yeah, yes, but I would argue that this is a line of problems based on having a professional teaching class.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I love the tangents. The tangents is why I'm here, to be honest. But also, what Dave was saying about agreeing with AA that people are irrational. They don't really, half the time the conclusion isn't derived based off of like perceiving the facts. It's more of kind of like an experience that they're going through, a personal experience that they're going through. I would also agree with that. But my problem with it was that AA was implying that we're all groping in the cave then, and we all have that issue, so we just have to go with the fundamental mythos, the foundation myth that's seems most reasonable to us, kind of. I mean,
Right.
that doesn't work.
And this is something in AA I pick up on semi-regularly. He talks about finding our foundation, like as if we can kind of just craft one on our own with our own intellect. But
That might have to do with the fact that he has a line of products by that title, but yes.
yeah, okay, that's fair. That's fair. No, but like, if we can't use facts, which is what AA assumes, how are we going to put together a foundation in truth? Probably not. Like you said, Dave, it can't happen. Like, our brains just can't handle it. So,
Well, actually, I was saying the opposite, though, because, I mean, you know, I don't think that you can perceive some facts under conditions of moral uncertainty or political uncertainty. Like I said, your brain is primed to prioritize moral and political concerns over epistemological ones, especially hard epistemological ones.
Mhm.
So it would be like trying, I mean, your brain, you technically can, you hear different wave frequencies. So you could technically hear a bird chirping at a Van Halen concert if you could filter out the noise, but you can't, right?
okay.
You know, so like, because your brain is just, it's distracted, right? Or you can't, or a better example was my original one, right? Like a really loud concert and you're trying to do math. Like your brain's not going to focus on that, right? Because there's this huge like explosion going on right in front of you. And so the thing is that the human brain is not designed to handle epistemological problems before it feels secure. For instance, like a bunch of Catholic theologians could get down and just like they could have an objective conversation about the facts supporting the resurrection. Like, and you'd be surprised. Like, I'm trying to think of a taboo topic that isn't so taboo that I would get that Endanger Settlers channel. This is going to sound cute, but in order to avoid controversy, like you'll have gender theorists at Berkeley, like you get them into like, if they're intelligent professors who would just like denounce everyone for being sexist if they even imply that there are such things as biological women. Like you get them down into like a room by themselves, like, okay, guys, like biological sex is real. And they're like, well, yes, there's a lot of facts showing this and that. They'll be reasonable in that context. And that's because like they perceive that in that place, there's no political danger. The reason why people are covering up these facts is because they feel that they are in a state of political and moral chaos. And the human brain's just not going to focus on facts in that environment. We pretend like we're focusing on facts in the same way that all of the Caesars pretended like they were servants of the Senate. But that's bullshit. You know, they ruled and the Senate followed. And you know, when we had a monoculture and when we had a moral society, people actually did discuss facts, and politics was actually based on what policy would do the best. Right now, the only thing politics is based on is who rules North America and Europe. That's the only thing under discussion. I guarantee it. No one is actually having a conversation over COVID. No one's actually having a conversation over crime. The question is, who will rule North America and Europe? And you know, that's the subtext. That's the subtext of was the Kyle Rittenhouse trial over whether Kyle actually was guilty? Like, obviously not, right?
Man, you're just touching every hot button issue, aren't you?
Sorry.
Also, well, DC, I don't think. Oh no, I was trying to back him up. You scared him off. I was trying to defend him. Okay, so DC, I was talking to you, DC. So, I don't think you were.
Crashed. I don't know.
I don't think you were like all the way off. I would say that Steel Manning A's argument was not necessarily that we can't even acknowledge facts, but he was saying that we're unable to process these facts without having like a reticent foundation myth under it. So we need to find that and build that for ourselves. And you know, that's where I agree with you, where it doesn't really work. But also, yeah, I mean, what everyone was saying, you know, like the human mind is just not capable of processing this stuff without, you know, without removing the given interests and stuff that's happening around us in our moral system.
Yeah, sorry.
No, go.
I really like what Dave brought up with like your brain isn't designed to consider deeper things when it doesn't feel secure, and I almost wonder if that's useful for the state to keep you in a state of like fear and uncertainty so you don't think. you're only thinking about survival, and you're going to turn to what you feel will defend you. And usually that's like, the big man with the big G man with a gun or something.
Yeah, but if they were doing this competently, none of us would be here right now, right?
Yeah. I mean, I hate to admit it, but even
the right
Soviets
has no reason to exist. Like, we have no right to exist without insane incompetence on the part of the establishment. I'm more like the Taliban. Like, why? Like in 2012.
No, we're not.
Okay, disavow that pretty hard.
disavow.
Okay, but what I'm saying is, like, what I'm saying here is in 2012, why were there any Taliban in Afghanistan after the American military had been there for 10 years? There weren't any reason other than the fact that the American military just didn't have no ability to secure that country. And by the same token, when it comes to power, there is no contest between us and the establishment. The only reason why we're here and able to organize is that the government just does not have the competence to do things the way it once did.
Oh, thank goodness. I am not part of anything ever. I'm not. Yeah, but also, where were we? Oh yeah, it was so okay. But my point here was that the human mind, and this was relevant for AA's idea here. The human mind isn't just mired just because of random chaos. There's very specific reasons why we might not be able to perceive or contextualize the facts correctly. And obviously there's the just natural limits we have, and there's confusion that we might have from poor experience, but also that there is a dividing line between people who misperceive the facts because of a failed moral system or their personal moral issues, and then the people who do perceive the facts correctly because they have the right epistemology, theology, morality, and everything. So that was the real issue that I was concerned about here, is that AA was missing that. If we're just going to select whatever foundation myth we want, is that even from reason itself? Did we rationally select that itself? Is it because he seems to imply that we're going to accept some kind of mythos because of our personal attraction to it or our personal understanding. But if we ourselves are limited, don't you think it needs to come from outside ourselves? Don't you think it needs to come from some higher place, because we're all in this situation where our understanding is veiled and mired by sin?
Yes.
So true, 21st.
Bazinga.
Well, I feel like that pause is a good place to... Okay. I don't know if you just cut off in the middle of that. I'm going to do the super chat now. Pete Coring for $20. Hasn't the popular God debates of the past 15 years or so proved that people don't really care about philosophy and arguments and just want to hate Christians on a very visceral level, like the late 19th century Russia? Yeah, no, I mean, I definitely think that's true. I don't... I don't, going into this live stream, it sort of feels a bit strange, because on one hand, I feel like I have said many things very similar to what AA said in the live stream that we're reviewing today. Yet, on the other hand, I don't really agree with what he was saying, because generally I agree quite strongly that politics isn't about debating specific truth claims. That the sort of like civics class idea of politics you get is that, like, you're concerned about an issue, you go debate that issue, you like gather signatures and stuff, and then if you get enough popularity, your issue gets passed through Congress or something. And that's all just in massive caricature, and it's nothing remotely like how real politics actually works. So that might sound like I'm pretty sympathetic to academic agent's point, but I feel like where he goes is a lot deeper. But to get to this actual to the actual super chat here, yeah, definitely. I mean, I definitely think these sort of popular atheist-theist debates from back during the new atheist phase, were very, very clearly not something that had a great deal of intellectual rigor. It's I don't know, it's just obvious that the main new atheist figures are just morons. They're not serious atheist philosophers. I don't know how you could possibly even debate that. I don't know. I get them all mixed up, but Dawkins, I think, has famously said since those debates. I think it's something he did afterwards. But he has since said that he would not believe in God, even if he found a message written in the stars that said, "I am the God of the Bible, worship me," because he said it would be more plausible to assume aliens must have done that than that God did it. So it's obvious these people have, as AA says in the stream review, and just no burden of proof that could possibly be met. These particular atheists. I'm not saying all atheists. So yeah, I know. Does anyone have anything to add to this super chat?
Yeah, I mean, like at a certain point, you have to walk into a debate recognizing you're not really arguing with the person, you're arguing with the listener, and they're just going to be your foil. I think recognizing that debates aren't between the debaters; they're basically arguments towards the audience is a really good step to approach any debate. I think where it's most obvious that this is the reality is probably like presidential elections or something, where the debate that the candidates do, they're not really talking to each other; they're talking to you, the viewer.
But it's even worse than that, because in the example Settler brought up, like the reason why the New Atheists got popular in 2008 is because a bunch of people wanted to hate Christians, and they wanted to blame them for the Iraq War, but what they really wanted to blame them for was September 11th and the decline of the 90s economy. And they wanted to convince themselves that if Christianity went away, then virtually all our problems will be solved. You can see this in atheist media all the time.
It's the audience.
It is the audience. It is. That's what I'm saying. It's the audience. Dawkins was playing to an audience when he said that. His mind was closed, but his mind is closed. I mean, he's selling closed-mindedness to an audience that wants to buy it.
When you're such a neo-lib, you'll throw away what built you to get even.
Right. Well, I mean, it's the lustful mob that wants to tear everything down. I mean, do these people even really want truth? I mean, obviously that's a stupid question, because like Settlers, like talking about Dawkins, if the truth was like written right in front of him, he wouldn't accept it. Why is that? Well, I would say it's the moral issues here, obviously. I mean, do you really think in that Yoram Hazony, Sohrab Ahmari, do you think those traditionalists, if they demonstrated, the theology all makes sense, and this is the moral system that you have to follow, if Douglas Murray and Dave Rubin, who have a very similar thing in common, if on that stage they were convinced that, and they were presented all the facts and it made sense about that, do you think they'd really want to accept that? No. Why? Because of that issue, that commonality that they have. And then, of course, the Adam and Sitch thing. I mean, I don't even know if those guys even care about the idea of truth. I mean, it just seems like.
Well, to be honest, I had them in a hard place. I came and I basically threw conclusions in their face that if they endorsed, they would essentially have to become right wingers.
Right, but they don't want to become right wingers.
Like, oh, hey, like civil rights has been we failed to achieve civil right. That's like a right wing opinion or a radical left one, but it's not a centrist position.
They don't want to become right wingers. Sitch says, I remember this. I'm not going to let us forget this. Sitch said, "We can't go back," as his fundamental slogan or whatever. A super chatter asks, "Why can't we go back?" And then Sitch just gives up. He's like, "Oh, I don't know. I mean, whatever. I don't know anything." Why are they saying that? Because they don't want to have that fundamental obligations. They like the situation of comfort that they're in, or whatever moral routine or lack of morality that these people have. That's what they're attached to, and it's so that's what's so dangerous about this. It's not. I'm not like just poo-pooing on all these people except Dawkins, because he's harming people a lot.
Have you seen his Big Bang Theory like fanboy tweet?
Oh man,
no. He's like, The Young Sheldon is such an innovative new comedy show that takes to task like America's backwards like fathers. You know, like it's such an intelligent show.
The stereotype couldn't get even more obvious. But literally, okay, so these people that have the problem where they literally can't reason because their passions and attractions are directed toward an end, a final end that is contrary to, you know, God's final end, our final effect, where we're supposed to go. It's like, you know, all things have to be ordered to that end in order for you to understand the purpose of your actions and the facts around you. If you're not ordered that way, then you don't see where it's going. You don't see the point of it. And I mean, that's that. I mean, so they're gonna, I don't know. I just can't believe Dawkins he literally gave into, it's not the Sheldon thing. It's like he gave into the stupid caricature stereotype where he just, oh, I am the stereotype.
We had a Poe's law going on there. Poe's law, you know, like how everything endorses its own stereotypical like parody.
Oh, I didn't hear about this one.
Right.
Haven't heard of Poe's law?
No, I heard of Poe's law, but I didn't hear it interpreted that way.
No, I don't watch female YouTubers.
Well, that Poe. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I'm sorry, that was a terrible joke.
It's pronounced femoid.
So true.
Sorry.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Settler. I have to be a little spicy with the jokes.
I think one of the things that 21st said that was kind of stuck out to me, said, you know, they want to destroy, talking about Dawkins and the atheists and the materialists. And that is true, but we can also use these conversations to reaffirm. So you are talking to your audience, and I agree with the facts and logic thing regarding, you know, these political arguments that we have are mainly rooted in, you know, not convincing our opponent, but convincing the audience. And this actually happened, I think it was in the book of Acts, like chapter 18 or 19. But Apollos was arguing with Pharisees or Sadducees, Jews, I don't know. And I think it says that before he was even arguing with them, like this argument, these rebukes that he had towards their arguments against Jesus Christ, reaffirmed the disciples in that area, and it helped them grow in their faith and grow in their belief. And so it was an education process. It was building up. It was a part of sanctifying them in the Spirit. And so there's always the opposite. Like, yeah, these conversations can be useful. And I think I've listened to a lot of conversations between like Doug Wilson and Peter Hitchens, for example, that are just really great, just good conversations that can help people grow as well. So there's always the flip side to that.
Don't let me forget about that, because man, Peter Hitchens is such a Giga Chad. I made a little video commenting on one of the many BBC debates he had. But you know, he was in the middle of this. I mean, he called out this phenomenon when it was happening, when he did the quote unquote debate with his brother Christopher Hitchens, the blasphemer and just, you know, progressive rebel. He was acknowledging, like, why are you guys really here? It's like you're cheering on because you're excited about him tearing down those principles and those rules and that belief system that keeps you from having sex, drugs, and rock and roll. And, you know, because it was this younger audience that they were doing, it was at some college or something in Michigan or whatever.
It was like a pay-per-view event, and that was everyone should really read The Rage Against God. Of all the anti-New Atheist books, that's by far the best. It's Peter Hitchens' sort of autobiography of his own spiritual journey. And it definitely, it's sort of the background book to that whole conversation with Christopher.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, 21st. I didn't mean to cut you
No,
off.
that's exactly what the point was there. But I mean, so these people that you've talked to everywhere, I mean, do you think Dave Rubin, Douglas Murray, do you think Adam and Sitch, all these centrist people, their issue is, oh, we don't have the exact facts that make, the reactionary worldview convincing? Do you think it's that, or do you think it's something else?
Well, it's that they're blinded by their own. I mean, they're walking in the darkness, right? Like First John.
They're living out Romans.
Well, they're not walking. Well, everyone kind of walks in the darkness of their own, inhibitions and our, imperfect minds and everything. But it's that some people embrace the darkness, and that's kind
right,
of
and that's being turned over to a debased mind or a depraved mind. But what I'm referring to is God calls you into the light. You walk in the light as you grow in relationship with Christ. You also grow in the knowledge of what is true, which is God. And if you reject that, if you are turned over to a debased mind, like it says in Romans 8, then Romans 3, you do walk in the darkness even more, and the darkness will grow within you. This is the analogy used in First John and John. So like Douglas Murray and Dave Rubin are walking in that darkness, and for them to actually, for Yoram and Sharab to actually like have them sit down and have a conversation and change their minds, it won't be Sharab changing their mind. It'll be God. It'll be a transformation of the heart, not of the mind, I think, is where we'll see that come in.
Yeah, and that also begs, like, are you praying for their salvation when you go into these debates? Do you first pray to God convinces them of the gospel, or do you pray that you win? Right? It's important.
Yeah, and you can do both, by the way. I actually that is a win. Praying the conversion for lost souls. That is the win. But also, like, you can, and maybe that isn't how it works out, but you can still pray that, okay, I hope that this does have a greater effect on whatever it is I'm speaking in front of, whoever it is I'm speaking in front of, and I do win this debate.
Yeah, which is why we all need to pray that both DC and Cringewalker become Catholic.
I don't know. I've been actually reading a lot of the Old Testament recently, and I guess I'm kind of, for some reason, it's making a lot more sense to me now than it did earlier, when I was just sort of like, oh, the Old Testament's just sort of tacked on. But you have this, the story of like this very chaotic period of time where everyone's just horribly corrupt. I'm talking about things like the Book of Samuel and the Book of Kings.
Yeah.
And so people have a very political relationship with God. And that's not to say that God is instrumental to the faithful. He's primary, but at the same time, what I'm trying to say is, like, God does have a cause, right? And he does have supporters of that cause who don't have spirituality. And they sort of travel with the people, even though they're not really holy themselves. And I wonder if that's a place that we're going to have to sort of get used to making for people. People they understand something is wrong. They understand that holiness is needed, but they just don't have the tools to get there themselves. Then.
Well, you're saying, so you're saying Yarvin and the centrists and Douglas Murray are going to be in that position where it's like, yeah, they're part of the army that is on the Israeli army that's on the side of God, but we need Daniel and we need David and we need these good boys to lead.
I mean, it's funny that we mentioned this, right? Because did anyone catch this tweet from Aiden Paladin today?
Yeah. She's been tweeting that type of stuff for a while now.
Oh, she has. Okay.
Yeah.
I thought that was news. Is this?
I mean, she might have just finally committed today. I don't know. But I know, like, a few months ago, she said something along the lines of, "I really want to worship Jesus," or something like that. So it's something she's been clearly struggling with for a while.
So
and this
based.
is sort of the quintessential example of, I think this is, I don't know. I think that the thing is we have to we have this sort of very like Disneyfied version of how people are converted to Christianity.
Yeah.
I don't think we should look down on people whose conversions have sort of a political edge. I think a lot of people in, say, like the time of Ruth or the time of Moab, that's the same book. Basically, like the Babylonian exile or the First Temple. A lot of those people who converted were involved in sort of a very human political struggle, and that's how they came to know a greater holiness. I don't think we should necessarily look down on that.
Yeah, I don't. I mean, like,
Yeah, of course.
Most of Europe was converted by their kings converting under like either duress or miraculous happenings, and a lot of them struggled with like, were they really Christian or not? And like, it took a few generations to like, confirm it, basically.
I mean,
and I want to say that I'm not going to just be so black-pilled with it. It's like, oh, all these people, they just don't want the truth, and they're just, rejectors, and they're people St. Paul was talking about, because there's Milo, who recently had a very good reversion to Catholicism, genuine Catholicism, with all the moral theology to it. And I don't know, it just seems to be all these, little pieces of evidence, including him, reminding me that, half the time it's our own natural reason or logic. I mean, it's the doctrine of the Catholic Church that we, all these new atheists included, everybody can understand, God's monotheistic existence through natural reason, through that alone. But also half the time it's like we don't arrive at wisdom and truth necessarily, or some kind of moral realization through our own reasoning and everything. It's this kind of like illumination or inspiration or some kind of experience we have. So, I mean, that's just another piece of evidence saying how important, like, just explicit grace is in this process of like figuring out the truth. And, thus again, like, I love them. They're very sharp guys, but these secular distant right guys, it just doesn't work. They don't have that aspect that you need.
Yeah, they always fall short somewhere, and just it's always very disappointing. I mean, the ones who actually are capable do seem to actually get it, and do seem that obviously the ones I agree with are the Christians, because I'm a Christian. So I guess that's just my bias. But
Well,
yeah, I agree.
Well, that's a based and red-pilled bias, though.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, no, I absolutely reject, I don't know, any sort of idea that having a bias for the truth is bad.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
but
that's literally that was literally, sorry. Did I completely steamroll you?
No, go ahead.
Where this is what A was referring to. It's like, oh, we need the mythos that's directing our understanding of these facts, bro. So the whole point is that, it's like God orders everything, preordains it to have a certain final end to it, a final purpose to it. So unless you're biased towards that purpose, you're not going to understand the true meaning of these facts. Carlson, DC, AC/DC.
I'm sorry. Can you repeat that? I like zoned out. That's my bad.
So just a little Aquinas here. It's like, if God, creates everything with a preordained purpose, like your final end, like for example, your end that you're supposed to approach, your purpose is to attain heaven, right? So it's like everything's going towards that direction, that purpose. You need to be biased towards that end, that intended effect that God has, in order to understand, what's the purpose of this fact? How should I understand, this thing about being emasculate, and so on.
Why was that directed at me?
Because I thought you were saying about how you need to reduce your biases and everything. And
oh no, I didn't say that. No, I just said, I guess I'm biased. I that's not a denunciation of being biased. That's just me acknowledging that I'm biased, which is good.
Says bias, refuses to elaborate.
Yeah, I'm biased.
Leaves.
Whatever.
So true.
Not a bad
the
thing.
dogma lives loudly within you.
Yeah, I've read Chesterton.
There was a pretty good meme I saw in Spanish Twitter recently where it was the image
Do you
of,
speak Spanish?
I can read it a little bit, not great, but I know enough to get the memes. But it
He knows
was
144 characters of it.
it
You can hit the translate tweet button.
it was some Spanish version of that, like, enjoyer versus something else, like with like the screaming leftist on the left side of the animation, and the right was like the Chad guy, the Giga Chad guy, and the text was basically uh make abortion illegal in Spanish. On the left, it was just like a lefty meme with just like a paragraph of why abortion should not be illegal, and on the right was like Giga Chad just saying prohíbe, Dios los prohíbe, and that was it. Does no one get what I just said?
Yes,
God
but
prohibits
actually,
it.
Yeah. It was just God prohibits it. Simple as.
but actually, guys, this perfectly gets us back to the original topic of conversation. The most interesting part, and I didn't get through the whole thing, but the most interesting part of the epistemological discussion between Keith Woods and Academic Agent was when they discussed why the left can't meme. Like, that's sort of like the weirdest thing, right? Like, with all their power, with all of their lock on the narrative, they can't meme. And if they have narrative control, why do their memes take longer to why are they all walls of text? And I thought that Keith Woods had a very interesting take on that. He said that, well, there's these intuitive truths that the right can tap into, but the left can't. The left has to operate through this filament of narrative, and the right just exists in sort of this void, this observational prima facie that allows it just to tap in to a lived reality. And that was like very interesting. I thought they should just spin off the conversation on that one, because whatever is the fundamental strength of the right now, it has something to do with that.
Yeah.
It has to be like and that's how people actually come to faith too. I know I went through this like long chain of complicated, unsexy intellectual revelations, which I couldn't even make a good video about that if I wanted to. But that's not how most people come to religious faith. They come to it sort of this very intuitive tapping in, right?
Yeah, I just sent it in the chat. I think a lot of ways. Sadler, would you mind showing the image so I can talk about it for a few seconds?
Yeah, 21st. Can you do that?
Sure, let me just get the tab open.
The minion of tech support.
I am the Indian tech support, sir. No, I'm kidding.
Congratulations on your recent promotion.
Was that a Twitter CEO joke?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, it's literally, wow. So true, actually.
Yeah, so I love this little Spanish Twitter thing because it's like, I think it's like abortion and either enthusiast or euthanasia. I don't know, but like progressives give a whole long rant when like the right wing just has to say like God prohibits it and that's the end of the story. You don't need to add anything more. And I think the right wing's confidence in statements, short, precise statements, is like that's often been the way in which the right wing attains power, is just noticing like a long leftist cope that's going on in some part of society and just responding with like a short, like witty statement. I mean, like half of the right wing elections were won by like statements like MAGA or something like that, and a lot of times they weren't even really clever statements. They were just like, MAGA itself is just a regurgitation of Reagan's campaign, which was also a regurgitation of Nixon's campaign. I think both those people used "Make America Great Again," and that's not even an original statement. But because no one teaches their kids about the past, everyone thought it was like some new statement. But it wasn't even that original. It was just like, you could probably see it running again next election. But like, that's really the power of the right wing, is the ability to just explain a self-evident problem with a simple short statement that gets the people to agree with it and want to change it. But how can you make that into like an operational dogma that will like do things? It's through God, to bring us back to the point. Like Christianity has these creeds that pretty well define what we believe in and what our goals are. We have
And fortunately, God even gave us an entire church that can define dogmas.
with an
Yes.
authority structure that's clear and removes dissent.
Well, even from like a broader Christian perspective, like when Christians start questioning, oh, what are like, you know, Christians, especially in America, when they start going like allowing like gay marriage and stuff, it's not really that they think it's a good thing; it's that they just don't read the Bible and they're just not honest. And so you can just like dismiss them and just respond with short statements from Scripture.
Well, actually, you know, this is interesting. As a 30-year-old boomer, I have to bring up this cringe 30-year-old boomer or 60-year-old boomer every time I talk, which is Rod Dreher. I find him almost unreadable, but he had a very good article the other week indicating that I do still read him. But it was about, you know, basically evangelical apologists for like LGBTQ outreach and how it's just totally incoherent nonsense. And
Yeah,
you know, these people are transparently just going with power. And it's sort of, I think it's increasingly becoming hard to mask that.
well, it's not maskable because the second you question their power, the demons come out, right? Have you ever seen someone that's pro LGBTQ that when you question the theology, they don't have a freak out? They can never handle it humbly.
Yeah, they always attack your character. I never seen.
Like,
yeah,
I don't even
That's-
argue. I don't even argue with them because like the second the demons come out, it's just like, well, there's nothing to be gained here. Why bother the conversation? I've been multiple times stalked by progressive Christians on Reddit when I used to spend my time there, and they're always the kind of people to stalk you, and they can't handle you disagreeing. They have to stalk you and attack you and send you direct messages because it's an assault. You're disagreeing with them is like a personal assault with them because they're demon possessed. Like I don't see like there's maybe like I don't really see right-wing Christians do that other than the ones that are obsessed with power, and that's a sin unto itself. Don't be obsessed with power or a lust. Like they're both sinful.
Well, yeah, I mean that's the issue we're having here. Like an entire population overwhelmed by lust, you know, raging against the truth.
Well, yeah,
Of course, they're gonna have that rage.
yeah. I mean, whether you're talking about people that perform same-sex acts or not, when you're evangelizing, one thing you really have to understand is you're not just asking them to believe something. You're asking them to stop doing a whole bunch of things that they really don't want to stop doing. So they'll like claim that, oh, I just can't believe in God, and this is especially, you know, difficult for people that have same-sex attraction, because then there's, you know, that there is no licit form in which they can act that out in a Christian framework. But even for normal people, you know, normal people are addicted to pornography, or have premarital sex or something like that. And you know, it's you know, gay marriage, as you mentioned previously, cringe walker. It's not. I don't know. I mean, the issue isn't even really that. It isn't even really that people don't read the Bible. It's that when you have 50, 60, 70 years of sexually compromising the entire world, of pushing abortion and contraception, and premarital sex and all these things that are all obviously evil on people, that then when you wave like gay marriage in front of them and say you have to submit to this, you barely have any room to oppose it. Because everyone knows that everyone is already sexually compromised.
Yeah, I mean, like all this started with divorce. Really, this generation's like plague of lust started with divorce being allowed.
It started
Yeah,
with,
who was it that
accepting
first declared
contraception.
that divorce wasn't a sacrament? I can't remember. That's Martin Luther, everyone.
Which he did. I don't know if he regretted it, but there's some hints in his letters that there was this one king or lord or something that some like random mayor who asked him to confirm the divorce of his wife, and he allowed it, and then that was essentially the start of the decline.
Oh, what are you a tri-sacramental Lutheran then?
You know, even Luther didn't know what the hell a sacrament were necessarily. I've always considered sacrament to be anything which Jesus did and showed his apostles as something to repeat. Seems to me to be a sacrament.
Oh man, it's like, what is going on?
No, I mean like what a sacrament is, like what's the definition of a sacrament, right? Like this is probably relevant to the topic in terms of like how do right wingers like define these things, but Like, what is the
If we
definition
ever
of
have a discussion about the sacraments, it's got to begin with something other than, oh no, man. I mean, like, what even really is a sacrament?
Well, that's a good starting
Like,
point.
I mean,
Well, yeah, I'm pretty sure DC doesn't believe in any sacraments.
What?
Well, you're a Baptist, right?
I'm an independent, like just reformed, like Calvinist. Yeah.
Bro,
Okay,
wandering.
I mean, are you
Anyway.
like a Baptist Calvinist or like a Presbyterian Calvinist?
I grew up Southern Baptist. I'd probably say lean more independent Baptist, but we do, we have communion. We baptize in a certain way. I mean,
Yeah, but
we have rituals. I don't know, like, I mean,
Baptists would traditionally refer to those as ordinances, not sacraments.
right? Okay.
The reason for that being that Baptists believe absolutely no grace is operative in either of those things, where even Presbyterians would think there is. But I'm not really sure what the Reformed Baptist take is. I have no idea. It might be closer to the Presbyterian view. I don't know. Sorry, I think I love talking about religion on this channel, but this does seem like it's getting into a bit too autistic of theology stuff.
No, this is
for the
great.
topic. But sorry, I don't know. Does anyone have something to say on what we've been discussing?
Well, like, the topic of like, can the right wing survive without God? I think we can see here it can't, because like the second you remove God, we start misidentifying the definitions of fundamental stuff, like sacraments. It's like the benefit of having God is like God gives a definition. You don't have to worry about defining that anymore. Dios
Thank you,
los
Cringe
prohíbe.
Walker. That is exactly. That's
But
exactly.
you don't know what it means, though.
What?
He's helping
like,
say our point.
You're not. I mean, like, there's going to be disagreements even within that. Like, the Catholics and Protestants can still get along. I mean, some people will say that they can't. I think
This
can't
stream
function,
was
but-
about us uniting under a big tent against a heathen and the atheist, not people that are confused about the realities of the church.
I will say like the Christian practice of establishing creeds that you have to like bind yourself to is something that we probably should apply to other areas of our life. At least we're sure of. Yeah, I saw that wave, the hand wave, David.
I'm just like, I mean,
well,
what
like,
Christianity is. That's what we do.
Yeah, but like at some point in
It's
time,
all encompassing. Like, all of it is within that.
I do kind of think that, like, even like me, when I say I think, it's like I've kind of sort of been influenced by the atomization of the Christian from the creed, and this is probably one of the paths of subversion in the West that we got to this point. In the past, a Christian was always loyal to the denomination. If they disagreed, they were no longer part of the denomination. These days, people will say their denomination, but then they'll go like, but I think. It's like, well, what does your creed teach? Like, well, what does your denomination teach? Even that level of like, even if it's like a creed within a denomination, I'd prefer like the actual creeds of the church itself going back thousands of years. But even if it's a creed within your denomination, it's still a step above. I think. It's like, oh, well, like, you're not a priest, you're not even a pastor, you're just an individual that like has studied the Bible individually and made your own individual choices. You weren't peer reviewed, bro. Where's your science?
You're not a priest. I know that feels like you're denying the universal priesthood of all believers, Cringe Walker.
It's like the stream was
Do
literally
people actually
about.
believe? Do people actually believe that's a thing? Universal priesthood?
That's what all Protestants believe in.
It's Quakerism, egalitarianism.
No. The
progressivism.
universal priesthood of all believers is what literally all Protestants believe in. It's like one of the most foundational Protestant beliefs.
Interesting.
Progressivism, egalitarian. I'm sorry, I'm just sparking out now.
Okay,
Oh,
that's my
man.
bad. Yeah, no, I just misunderstood what that meant. Okay. that
Yeah.
makes sense.
No worries. So yeah, let's see. Super chats gotten quite a few, which is nice. By the way, guys,
Give them more money.
I heard recently that it's actually legally obligatory to super chat me. I don't know if this is true or not. I could be wrong, but I heard there was a law passed. So you might get locked up if you don't, but your
In
business.
Canada.
Yeah, I don't know
countries,
where that law was passed. I have no clue. Believe it or not, some of us elder millennials have unironically maintained our faith through the past 20 years or so, and those years have not been kind to us. We are now in the told you so phase.
Skipped over the emojis. Rolling on the floor emoji, laughing emoji. We are now in the told you so.
Yeah, no, I think I have to agree with Matt Walsh on this one. Emojis are for women and children.
Well, I'm a child, so there we go.
Can I just make a comment of MacArthur's meme video that he recently made?
I have no idea who MacArthur is.
Oh, I
John
sent it to you.
MacArthur?
Yeah, John MacArthur. I think it was John MacArthur. Did a series of videos referencing memes, and at that point, I just felt like the Reformed theology that was left over in me kind of just like died slowly.
Oh no!
I'll push in a chat for anyone who wants to see it. John MacArthur was making Among Us references, and I just felt like my soul was dying watching this.
Anyways, let's not shake. let's not shake that tree.
Okay. Yeah. And anyone have anything to say to this comment?
I mean, there's always going to be told you so. Like, I mean, we're always going to be telling people told you so. Like we do that all the time. That's what being right is in a world that rejects the truth. But like, and I think this is going to be true for most of us. We are not in the majority. Maybe cultural Christianity is like 56% at this point. Maybe. I mean, I live in. No, you don't even. No.
It's down to
30%.
like 30. Yeah, it's down to 30%.
Even like cultural Christianity. Okay, sure. Yeah, we're in the super minority.
You mean like baptism? That's a joke. That's a joke. That's a joke. That's a joke.
Yeah, no, I don't care. You guys are wrong. But maintaining our faith through it, like that's gonna be a normal part of it. And hopefully, as we disciple and grow churches and bring people to Christ and help lead them to Christ, then we'll have that opportunity to be like, yeah.
I do think that there's like probably going to be a significant we're in the decline, and as things start to decline, people are going to start asking why they're declining, and our role is basically to be like, well, you're abandoning God's law. What did you think was going to happen?
No, our role is that we're the scapegoat for the decline.
Yeah, but like we can still go to our crucifixion deaths by saying "told you so."
So true. 99 Iron Duke for $10 Australian. A question for the whole panel. Can traditional Catholics on the right cooperate with traditional right-wing people in other religions and even right-wing agnostics and atheists on other issues? Well, I'm not a traditional Catholic, so I guess this isn't directed towards me. But I suppose I'll subtract the word traditional there from the super chat, and I'll answer it assuming this is directed towards me. Can I, as an anti-trad Catholic, cooperate with other anti-trad people on the right? Yeah, I mean, I have two Protestants on here. I don't know, like, I don't know what you're asking from me. I have Protestants on my channel all the time. I'm friendly with Protestants. I mean, all I do is I have like some banter with them. I tell them that outside the church there's no salvation. I tell them that that it is absolutely necessary for the salvation of every human creature to be subject to the Roman Pontiff. I tell them that no one, neither not only Jews nor Muslims, but even schismatics cannot be saved, even if they die for the name of Christ, if they are outside of the one Catholic Church. But I tell them these things because they're true, and because they need to be reminded of these things. But that doesn't mean I can't still be friends with Protestants and be friendly while reminding them that they absolutely must join the Catholic Church. That even as the Second Vatican Council reaffirmed, there is no salvation outside the church. So yeah, I don't really see where the conflict is here. Do I have to not remind Protestants that they're putting their soul in peril by not being a member of the church that Christ established? I don't know. I seriously do not see the conflict. I am not like I follow a lot of Protestant like religious figures, not even just like political figures. I follow a lot of Protestant political figures too. But say James White, for example. I like James White. He's interesting. He says a lot of interesting stuff. It doesn't offend me that he says that Rome's gospel is not a saving gospel, and that no one who believes in Rome's gospel can be saved. I know that's what he believes. I'm not offended when he says that. And I would not be offended if Cringe Walker or DC here told me that. I mean, that may not be the only Protestant opinion. There is, of course, the like C.S. Lewis mere Christianity opinion, but that is a very common Protestant opinion. Now, I suppose perhaps this might be directed towards not just Protestants, but as he says here, also agnostics and atheists. I feel like agnostics and atheists need to recognize that that if they want to be on the right, they need to understand that they're in a sort of subservient position to Christians. I do not. I can have a position of equality with heretics in a political movement. I cannot really maintain this with atheists. Now, if atheists want to tell me that, like, my atheism is not going to really try to violate your Christianity. Like, I'm not going to try and put my atheism above your Christianity. I'm not going to try and make this an atheist movement. Like, okay, that's cool. That's fine. But as soon as your atheism starts intruding on this at all, then I mean that's really where the issues come up. So I don't know. I rambled quite a bit there. What do people have to say to that?
I think that I'll just say I think that your attitude of accepting the reality of hard disagreements inside political coalitions is actually essential for us going forward. We all have to maintain the coherency of our religious positions, while at the same time having the maturity to not cathartically lash out over them. I think that's the problem, is that on the left, at least, and a lot less so on the right, it's basically being run by children who can't compartmentalize this and can't accept the reality of hard disagreements, even dire disagreements.
I'm lashing out right now.
Yeah, I'm currently in the process of lashing out. I think
I'm frothing at the mouth.
literally seething. Yeah, I think we can get along with I'll use the term traditional because I'm not autistic. I think we can get along. I think we can get along with other traditional, like and Settler basically nailed it on the head, right? Other traditional, like, religious people. But when it comes to atheists and agnostics, yeah, a subservient role. They have to understand that, this is only going to work if we do it this way, because your way hasn't been working for the last 200 years. So
atheism provides a particular challenge, especially the anti-theist variety.
Right.
I don't know what to say about that.
Well,
it's just,
the truth,
it's you're going to. This is why I take James Lindsay. Adam and Such quoted James Lindsay against me. Like, well, as James Lindsay he had this revelation recently. You can't have liberalism without an ethos. And I wish I had said this, and reminding me again what James Lindsay was doing before he had this anti-woke revelation. Oh yeah, he was burning down the West ethos by being a new atheist, and the loud one.
Right.
So it's like it's basically like appointing an arson as the town's fire marshal. I guess he knows how to light fires, so he hypothetically would know how to put them out. But I mean,
well, there's this emergent problem, and well, it's not an emergent problem; it's a problem as old as truth itself, which is that, like, people like Jack Murphy, if you're familiar with him in the manosphere, it's like these people, they're not Christians. He's not a Christian. He joins the right wing. He becomes what he kept saying on Twitter was Bible curious. He became Bible curious. And now, because he's Bible curious, he read Mere Christianity by C.S. Lewis, and he maybe opened a couple of books of the Bible. And what he took from it was this concept of muscular Christianity, which you may have heard of. It's like a 19th century thing, which is basically just bodybuilding and being jacked for God, which is not Christianity. So it's like, okay, you're Christian, but you're not actually following God. So you're not a Christian. So these perversions, these antichrists, are things we're going to have to deal with as well and approach tactfully, which is, I guess, what Muslims are as well. And also, like, atheists, there's not a thing as an atheist. They're, like you said, anti-theists, anti implying they're in opposition to, and so they believe in something which is in opposition to God. So that's just going to be another challenge we're going to have to get over.
Yeah, I'll go back to the words of Christ that, like, you come to him for comfort. And so if you're going to anything else for comfort, you're probably not going to find comfort. And this is something I've noticed with a lot of these, like, secular types. They're really just seeking the right wing as a attempt to feel more comfortable in this, like, abstract, like, neoliberal view they want of the world. But in reality, like, they kind of created this world because originally they were allying with the leftists to get their neoliberal utopia, and it didn't work. They put dictators into power instead by accident. I think recognizing that these people who claim to be our allies are never going to find comfort until they return to Christ is important to recognize. Like, they're kind of like, you're only as useful as me to get back into power, but after that, I mean, I can't be with you because you're going to just never be comfortable. You're not going to stop at just getting power with me. You're going to want to replace me too. And then you're going to run this ship back into the hellhole that it got out of.
Why would an atheist like even try to accept a moral or political truth if they didn't perceive it to be in their self-interest? Like, I just don't understand.
I mean, people change.
Like Adam and Sitch don't perceive, reactionary, conservative thought to be in their self-interest, so they just don't accept it. It's simple.
Well, that's a bad example because I have no idea what those two believe.
They believe in the dollar, the growth
I
that
just
comes
have
with it.
I've tried to figure out what they actually believe, and I just can't piece together anything coherent.
Oh, I know what Sitch believes. He said, "We can't go back."
Yeah, we can't. We need an ethos, but I can't tell you what the ethos is. We can solve the problem of hard integration, but I don't have a solution. We're declining, but who cares? And we can't go back. And if we just get rid of the wokeness, we'll stop complaining about the decline.
I used to call this spiritual fidgeting, because there's just no firmness in it. They're very, like, forgive the language, that they're limp souls. They know they don't want what is currently happening, but they're just desperate to get. They just don't know where to go from there. Like, they just complain, and I mean, Adam and Stitch are also clearly grifters, and so they'll spend like an hour on like 2 words just to get as much dollar as they can get out of it. So, like, they recognize their followers will dump them lots of money if they say, I disagree with this, and they don't even have to say why they disagree with it. Just saying that will get them like thousands of dollars.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. They don't. It's kind of amazing how when you think about it. I mean, I do actually kind of like. When I was doing chores on Sunday, like about a year ago, I always used to have them on in the background because it was like great white noise. But it's. I don't know. It's hard to go back. It's hard to watch them because I just have no idea what they believe in.
Okay, but when you were asking, look at all these evidence of decline and how people are depressed and nobody's getting married, and they're like, well, that should be clear enough that their nihilism right there. It's like, who cares if people are no longer having families like people do in a civilization?
But do they believe? I mean. But examine them as people. Like, examine them as people and not opponents, right? From an intellectual point of view, I could dismiss them after they said, "Who cares about these manifest, measurable instances of material decline in our society that just are going to destroy most people's lives if left to continue in the way it has?" If they say, "I don't care about that," then you're right. Conversation is over in an intellectual sense. But I kind of want to take it one step further. Because I want to know what these people actually believe, because they represent a lot of actual people in this world who are actually going to need to come into contact with some real spirituality, obviously for the sake of the glory of God, but also just for the sake of our civilization, if it's not going to just slump into a huge dumpster fire.
Well, I mean, I don't know Adam and Stitch very well. I haven't most of the times I've watched their channel, it's because you're on there, Dave, and I haven't even watched your most recent video on them. So I don't want to speak too much about what they personally are like or what they believe or how they act. But I would say just more generally, people like them. As I said earlier, when you're asking them, not necessarily to convert in this case, but when you're asking them to sort of convert their perspective on this particular issue, on stuff like family and the decline of the family. What you're essentially telling them or asking them is to stop having sterile sexual relationships. That can transition from one person to another, whether over a short period or a long period. And that's something most people are just absolutely unwilling to do. I don't know, Adam and Stitch. Perhaps for the standards of atheist centrists, they are actually relatively chaste. Who knows? But I have my doubts. And when you talk about stuff like marriage with them, you're telling them their entire sexual habits need to be completely changed. So you're not really debating with them about public policy.
And it was the fundamental insincerity that they were having, where it's like, they're saying, oh, it's not true, and then once you point out the decline, oh, it doesn't matter, who cares, all this stuff, we can't go back. It's the fun, and then them, supposedly getting along well with you on the stream, and then slandering you in other instances when you're not there and you're far away.
Oh, don't remind me about that part.
I'm sorry.
I'm putting it out of my mind.
My point is the insincerity, though. The insincerity is the hint at the atheism. And
if they were insincere, that's not the point. The point is there's 1,000 people like them, right? And there's 1,000 people or there's a million upon millions of young men like them that need to be woken up. And so by understanding them, we understand the people who are trying to rage, who are like them.
Are people like Adam and Stitch capable of waking up though? Like, they seem pretty like
they clearly don't want to. They actively don't want to wake up. Actively.
Oh, there's also the possibility that if you want to use a Matrix example, they may be the guy who woke up but went back in just to get the steak, right? Like
that steak.
They're not those guys. That doesn't actually.
But they get paid pretty well for pretending like they don't understand about stuff, right?
I don't know. I'm too young. I can't speak on this.
Go ahead. I want to hear what people have to say.
No, I mean, okay. Well, I wasn't just saying, oh, they're insincere just to be pointless about this. So you want to understand, them, and so that we can understand the huge section that are like them. It's like, well, Seller was right there. I mean, their vices probably preclude them from wanting to accept the thing. But I
don't think that they're vice. I don't think it's their vices. I think it's they're not afraid that they're. I mean, like Adam's married. I don't this is. I think that this is. He's not worried that he's going to have to stop promiscuous sex. Hopefully, because he might be converted to Christianity. He's worried that he's worried that there's not going to be this comfortable solution. Because without the implication of a comfortable solution, then complaining about wokeness kind of takes on a different flavor.
Well, yes.
So he's afraid of the suffering that is inherent in traditional thought or Christian thought, is what you're saying.
He's in. I don't even think it goes to Christianity. Just try to get him to some place where Molebug is, who's an atheist or a deist or something like that, right? In order to embrace that worldview, you have to admit that 90s Fresh Prince of Bel-Air isn't coming back,
right? And that kind of hurts a little bit.
Oh, that hurts a lot for people like Adam and Sitch. That hurts a lot. That's actually what motivates them. Yeah. They do want to go back. They want to go back to the 90s.
Yeah.
They want to go back to the 20s.
So that's a good point to bring up. What will convince them that the 90s are locked out as something to go back to? The context of the 90s is, the Cold War ended. Everyone felt like it was an era of good feelings. The economy was booming. Technology was going crazy. And then suddenly, it all comes crashing down when we realize half the world hates us.
Well, I mean, the direct argument's not going to work because I don't know if they would admit that they have that nostalgia, but they absolutely do.
Right. Well, I think the reference to Yarvin in this situation where, I don't know how I wouldn't call him a post-trad or something, but Yarvin, reactionary atheist, whatever. He admitted himself. He was more explicit about this, which is I don't know, something I like at them. At least he's upfront about his thought process and everything. But he was just saying, oh yeah, and like one path that people can take is like these traditional religions and everything. It's like but it's like, oh, I couldn't do it myself. I'm too like prideful for that. And so he was explicit about it. It might be the pride of life in these guys, where it's there's a presumption that that they have a right to stay in their comfort zone and avoid difficult issues and difficult truths if it's inconvenient for them, or if it's causing too much, I don't know, just causing too much conflict for them. It might be the pride of life in that. I think that is other than lust, that's probably the other big problem with this section of the population, this demographic that we supposedly think is reasonable or reachable. It really is the pride of life in that.
So true. DC, did you have something you were going to say?
No.
Okay, well, I'm going to go through some more super chats then. 99 Iron Duke for 5 Australian. To clarify, I mostly meant that other Christian religions. I cannot type for Tofi. Okay. I mean, I don't really have much to add to that then. But thanks for the clarification.
What's Tofi?
I have no idea.
I'm Googling it.
Tofi's a candy, but
yeah, it's a
Bro, it's
caramelized
toffee.
sugar or molasses along with butter and occasionally flour.
Yeah. But yeah. Just one clarification, I guess, to DC though on this point from previously. I would say it's fine to call me a traditionalist, just not a Catholic traditionalist.
Yes.
So, but in a broader sense, the term traditionalist is fine as long as it's not referring to trad Caths or anything.
Yeah,
like
no,
that.
I understand your position because we had a 40-minute conversation on it where I lost all of my live stream viewers because they all logged off. It was great.
Yeah. Let's see. Another super chat. Marcher for $5. On memes, the left says the same thing about the right. Just FYI, I am not convinced that we aren't deluding ourselves by saying that the left can't meme.
Well, that's cool and all, but the left wing is delusional, and our memes go by faster. So
Yeah, they're wrong.
Yeah, I mean, let's take, just one example of one of the most, of one of the most successful, like right-wing memes. It's okay to be white. Like that meme like had tons of power in the real world. It all sorts of stuff happened because of that meme.
yeah, leftist memes never have real world impact, right?
Yeah.
Like, they never have. What was the last left wing meme that had a real world political impact? Can you think of anything?
Yeah, I can think of the one, Barack Obama's Hope and Change.
Okay, yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree,
that
and
was literally
I've
the
heard
last
I've
one.
heard people say
Yeah.
before stuff like, you pay to see left wing memes when you go to the movies. Okay, I agree with that. That's not wrong, but the point is memes. What we generally talk about when we talk about memes is things that are that are created by just ordinary people and shared throughout the internet. It's not that all the people on the left that would be doing that are employed in Hollywood. There's lots of ordinary people that on the left that try and fail to create the same sort of memes that proliferate on the right. So I'm really just not convinced by this. Yes, no, I'm not saying that like the people behind left-wing propaganda aren't good at making left-wing propaganda. They often are.
Classic Onion articles of the 90s were wall-to-wall memes.
Yeah,
Like, the left could do this prior to 2012, but after around 2015, it really lost the ability. It's one of the few things culturally that you can just see manifested in my lifetime. I remember what the left could meme, and they can't meme anymore.
But even when they did meme back in those days, it was usually like things that most right wingers would agree with. Also, like it was quite like at least like libertarian right wing probably. Like a lot of it was like dunking on like Bible Belt people and like a lot of like obsessed parents. And those things still exist now, though. They're just moved into the left wing rather than the right wing. Today's obsessed parents are in like, oh my god, my child's gender is blah 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 blah. Right? It's like they're obsessed with these stupid little things that just replace gender with like video games and demons in the 90s, and you had the same shit. Oh, forgive my language.
Yeah, I do agree that the left-wing meme of the 90s owed a lot more to scoffing and misrepresentation than does the right-wing memes.
Mm-hmm.
The right-wing memes just have to do with like sort of visceral impressions of modern life.
Yeah.
Yeah, like Among Us.
Those are Zoomer memes. They don't count.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. For real. No cap. Let me get the perm going.
Oh,
As the resident Zoomer.
Another super chat. Women rock for $5. How did St. Thomas Aquinas get his hands on the lost Aristotelian texts before the fall of Constantinople? I'm assuming the reason he asked me this question is because, it's so funny. There's no way that Settler's Lament would know the answer to that off the top of his head, and I have no clue. So I'm assuming that's why you asked this question. But I just want to call you out and say I know why you're asking this question. I know this is a joke.
I could probably answer this question actually.
Okay, go ahead.
First, I need a year for St. Thomas of Aquinas because I don't actually know when he lived.
Like 1200s.
I mean, obviously, if you live on the Mediterranean, you're going to get a lot of trade from Constantinople. And that was also around this time that the Mediterranean nations violently sacked Constantinople and raided everything in the libraries and spread it across the entire Western world. So, like, it's not hard to figure out how he got those books. He got those books on the Crusader black market.
I don't know. I have no clue. That does seem plausible. And anyone else want to theorize on this?
I like the Fourth Crusade theory.
Yeah. I've been meaning to have I've been meaning to have Alan Rule on for a Crusade special, and I know especially the Fourth Crusade is one he.
I always like to point out that if you take the total number of people who died in 500 years of crusading, it is actually less than the number of people the United States killed in Iraq in 10 years of war. So don't let any atheist tell you, oh my God, so violent, so oppression. It's like your secular states have all killed more people in every modern warfare than 500 years of religious warfare. So just silence, stupid.
So true. Zero Kev for $2. Peter Thiel gave me $2. Well, thank you very much for passing along 66% of that to me and 33% of that to Google.
Always wins.
So true. And Pete for $9. I don't really get what all the fuss is about. Glenn Youngkin just won Virginia's governor's race, and Kevin McCarthy is 1 year away from being speaker. Libs are being owned. Are we winning? Derp. Aren't we winning? Derp.
Yes. The winner of Virginia, who recently didn't he say something like incredibly progressive about like BLM or something?
I don't know.
No, he's had interns that worked for him on the campaign that are now hired in the government, which are like skirt-wearing men and pronouns and bios and stuff like that. Super bad.
When Republicans win these kind of elections, all that means is that, you're still going to get progress just in like bite-sized chunks.
You best believe in cyberpunk dystopias. You're living in one.
Yeah. I do have to say, all else being equal, I'm grateful that he won. It was a nice embarrassment for the left, and especially I think this whole anti-CRT movement has been very good. Yes. I think it's really mobilized the boomers a lot. Not that I think much will come out of that ultimately. I mean, what one practical thing is it's I'm sure it's been a part of the uptick in homeschooling, which I mean obviously the main reason for that is lockdown. But still, if we can get people out of government schools, that's always a good thing. So I am grateful for the events in Virginia. I think they're a net positive. But saying that does not mean that I think that means that like the based Republican Party is about to save us.
Right.
To the poor FBI team that was forced to listen through multiple hours of screaming Karens across the country, I feel no pity for you. You deserve all your stress, and I hope you enjoy every moment of it.
Yep, so true.
So true.
Then another one, Zero Kev for $5. The concept of progress acts as a protective mechanism to shield us from the terrors of the future. Libs always realize this after it's too late.
On that topic, I'm always reminded of the science won World War II, basically the atom bomb. But science also caused World War II because the industrialization of death in the camps in various places in Europe, that was science also, like the perfection of science. And after World War II, there was just a general idea that like science is dangerous. It can just wipe entire races out. It can obliterate cities. It's powerful. It can do crazy things, but it's also really dangerous. And you shouldn't just trust the science. Trusting the science will lead to like Hiroshima or something. And throughout the 1960s, there was this like kind of mellowing out of like faith in science because of like what had happened. And then all of a sudden around like the 1980s, it started rearing up again. And now you have the biomedical security state. It just seems that like every time this religion pops up every couple of decades, it just like kind of comes into the room, makes a mess, and then gets kicked out. And then, oh, here he is back in like 20 more years.
So true. Society Man for $5. Glad to see Dave being so active on YouTube recently. I don't know which Dave this is in reference to. I'll assume it's
Might
for
be
the
me.
Distributist.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I know
the
Society.
Dave.
I know Society Man. He's a good guy. But this tweet's just reminding me of promise videos that I haven't made yet. And
When's the
I
Shrek
have-
video coming out?
oh no!
What's the meme of the like dying the dying Wojak, like all scribbled gray dead, waiting to figure out what distributism means?
I would say I like the Dune review. It was a very good
Oh, thank you.
video to go through.
This word to the wise kids: never promise videos before you can make them all, and don't record half a video and then be like, "Oh yeah, I'll record the other half after this major life event happens."
Dave,
It never works.
did you ever watch Cowboy Bebop back in the day?
Of course, I was totally a weeboo. They did
all
that
right,
didn't exist in the early 2000s, but if it did, I would have called myself one.
Have your virgin eyes yet witnessed what Netflix did to that series? Silence. He just left.
Hey.
You crashed as I asked about the Netflix series.
Oh, am I back?
Yes.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, the cursedness of that series caused my browser to blip.
Have you seen it yet?
No, and I don't. I can't even imagine. I assume there's some. I don't even know what the ethnicity was. They couldn't.
No. I don't care about ethnicity. I care about the like constant copes to gender fluid stuff.
Oh no, really?
They went. They yeah. I would like you to. I don't know how I can convince you to suffer through 10. I think they had like 10 episodes or so. I mean, I will say there were positives in it, but I want to see your review of the Netflix series. First, I want you to do. I can't order you around, but I'm happy to super chat you to do it. Yeah.
Well, I disabled super chats for just this reason, so I wouldn't be forced into watching anime for money for your filthy lucre. I do not submit to plenary indulgences to watch Cowboy Bebop.
I was on a bit of a Cowboy Bebop run through this.
I remember the anime fondly.
Suffering through the Netflix series convinced me to rewatch the original. I'm just like, this is like quality. I'm not usually a fan of the anime. I typically view it as degenerate, but that like 90s and 80s era where it was actually like decent art, I miss it.
Yeah. So
I've discussed this endlessly with Fritz Imperial, which I feel like should be invited on one of these streams. He might be an interesting guest.
yeah. I've
Well, that was subtle.
I've had him on before. But yes. Another super chat, Zero Kev for $2. POV, you failed no distributist November. Now I want to be clear on something. I want to be clear. This does not fail no distributist November. No distributist November only applies for distributist's own channel. Speaking of which, Dave, were you even aware that no distributist November is going on?
I've heard about it, but maybe I should try to. It's too bad. I should have tried to release more videos. If I wasn't traveling constantly this month, I probably would have just totally released videos.
Settler, you had the opportunity to order us all to get that icon up before we started the show, and you failed to do that.
It's for the uninitiated. No
This is the
distributist
Coomer Day
November
one.
is something that I decided to start this November as an annual tradition. Of course, it does not include the distributist when he's on other channels, because that would affect my channel, and that's not okay.
I had the misfortune of being ordered to make the Coomer Dave meme, and I still regret it to this day.
So true. And Iron Duke for another $5. Honestly, I don't understand why David Carlson wants to slag me off. I have subscribed to Dave for years. Some silly young men on the right today. Well, I just want to say. I stand by my previous statement that atheists and agnostics on the right need to be subverted. Subvertient. I'm not going to say the word. Subservient, yes, to the Christians. With that said, I love all my atheist and agnostic donors. I love them so much. You're the best.
Well, you're welcome for encouraging him to give you another $5 or 66% of $5. But yeah, I know. I just muscular Christianity isn't really Christianity, and he disagreed. And he's an agnostic, so his opinion doesn't matter on Christianity in the first place. So I don't know why he cares so much.
Yeah, no, I did briefly see that you two were debating a bit in the chat.
Yeah.
I don't really know what happened. All I saw is that you were debating. I'm not going to go through it and read it.
Yes,
but yeah, no, I want to be clear. I'm certainly, I know what David's position is, David Carlson. But I certainly am not saying that there's absolutely no place on the right for non-Christians. I just don't think there's enough people to make a position like that. But that also doesn't mean we can't just allow people like atheists to assume that they have just as much role in deciding the direction and deciding the sort of like governing policies of any sort of movement that I'm going to be a part of.
Yeah, when we have our February revolution, we must not have an October revolution to the atheists.
I disavow all that in Minecraft.
Yeah. And let's see, is that it for super chats? Yes, that is all the super chats. So yeah, I don't know what else. Do we have more to talk about?
There's just one little thing left. At the end of their, well, they were talking about it throughout, but at the end they were Keith and AA. If we remember from a long time ago, that's what their their discussion. They were talking about faith, and they were, even though Keith like they literally received a super chat saying, "Oh, Keith is using the new atheist idea of faith," and he said, "No, I'm not. I'm pretty sure it's this, but it has to be relegated to empiricism, essentially," which means he didn't understand, which means he was doing new atheist version of faith. Shake my head. But I think we just have to address that for those guys. So I don't know who's the theologian here who can help me. I don't know what faith is.
Is that your cringe walker impression?
Hey.
No, I'm joking.
Settler, help me. What does faith mean? I'm a new atheist.
I mean, do you want me to read the Catholic Encyclopedia?
Oh, what about Catholic Answers? They have a good website.
Okay. Catholic Encyclopedia. In the Old Testament, the Hebrew means essentially steadfastness, where it is used to describe the strength of Moses' hands. Hence, it comes to mean faithfulness, whether of God towards man or of man towards God. As signified by man's attitude toward God, it means trustfulness or felicity. It would, however, be illogical to conclude that the word cannot and does not mean belief or faith in the Old Testament, for it is clear that we cannot put trust in a person's promise without previously assenting or believing in that person's claim to such confidence. Hence, even if it can be proved that the Hebrew does not in itself contain the notion of belief, it must be necessary to presuppose it. But that the word itself contains the notion of belief is clear from the use of the radical, which is the. Okay, I'm not going to continue reading this. So basically, Catholic Encyclopedia is saying that's used in two senses: belief, both for belief and for faithfulness or steadfastness or trust.
Trust. Right.
I've always liked there's a prayer by Saint Clement, and at the end he I think he's describing what faith is in his understanding, and he says he basically describes God as like, you are loyal to those who trust you, and that's a phrase that's stuck with me since I've read that years ago. That like God chooses to be loyal to whoever will trust him. Which implies like he's going to determine if you trust him, and that's going to be hard. But he is loyal to you if you're willing to walk with him. And it's weird to like it sounds wrong to say God's loyal to you when you should like, that's the normal conception is like you're supposed to be loyal to God.
Well,
but
he keeps his promises.
Yeah, exactly. So like in many ways, I think that's kind of what basically faith is. It's like, do you trust God? Then he's loyal to you. There's faith.
Yeah, well, God,
of
course.
The way I thought of it, the way too long to get into here, but there's three theological virtues of faith, humility, and love, or faith, humility, and charity. And I believe that each of those sort of correspond to a fundamental nature of God himself, or at least the Christian God. And of those, faith refers to God's sort of constant and ordered nature, as opposed to some kind of chaotic conception of God that has no ability to make or keep promises.
Mm-hmm.
I think hope is what you're thinking of, not humility.
I'm pretty sure I've heard both versions, and the C.S. Lewis version is definitely humility.
Okay.
It can be translated, I think, either way, because the Greek isn't a one-to-one translation for English words.
Okay, I've seen this both ways so many times that.
Fun fact, you know the Greek word for like romantic love, eros?
Yeah.
That word does not show up in the New Testament, as far as I can tell. And it took me a while to wonder like why, and then recently I was looking over the part where it's mentioning that Mary like knew no man, and I realized right there that the phrase "knew no man," it's actually using the Hebrew conceptualization of romance, using the word "know" rather than eros. So it's like, the writer of that was clearly from a Hebrew background, and I started looking in the scripture of where the word "know" is, and in fact, it's used quite a while in place of eros. And I found that very fascinating because, like, this is also one of the things that, like, a lot of progressive Christians try to push. Oh, they never say it never outright condemns homosexuality, but if you read Paul in the Greek, he's literally saying like, men who know men in the sexual sense. So it's like, yeah, you're not gonna find anything about like the Greek word for homosexuality in the Bible, but you will find the Hebrew concept of the word there.
Well, I mean, there certainly is not a Greek word for homosexuality because the word homosexuality was invented in the late 1800s.
There's a Greek word for like it's not like homosexuality as a term, but there's two different words. One for where there's an age difference and where there's not, which says a lot about that culture. But Paul also invents the phrase, like he transliterates the Hebrew in Leviticus rather than using a Greek word. He just directly translates it literally translates to male towards male, basically. Like it doesn't outright say like homosexual, like kind of like that. It says like male with males, basically. And then he inputs the word shame at the end, so it's like it's pretty direct, honestly. But you have to recognize the Hebrew through the Greek lens.
No, man, unless the Bible literally says no homo, I refuse to believe that.
It's like, well, if you want to ignore how Hebrew is spoken, and that's on you. But me being a translator, let me just translate no as love then. So screw off.
Right. So the point.
So as a ramble.
Yeah. Oh man. So yeah. So faith essentially is a trust. It's a belief in what God has revealed and his promises that he's going to keep it, even though we don't fully understand ourselves, because like a child, their mind is limited and our minds are limited in our capability to reason. We can't perceive some things that are outside of our eyes. So of course you would have to trust his revelation. It's literally just necessary. It's completely reasonable that would exist. But I mean, it's like both of them are very sharp. I mean, Keith is a very sharp guy, but he was still implying this, which is a little frustrating. That it has to be kept. Faith is just blind belief and stuff, and it has to be kept in check by the empirical objective facts that we have. Well, no, it's something that's super rational. It's something that's above that. Because of the necessary limitations that we have in our mind and how we have to understand that there's probably higher truths that God's dealing with and we're not dealing with. So yeah,
there's an opportunity there to steal the atheist definition of science to some degree, because they basically trust the science, right? And so science is loyal to them. And so if you want to kind of steal the word that they're appropriating there, because if they're going to define faith as blind trust, then we should really try to deconstruct what they're doing there in the leftist sense to some degree, because it's they're kind of ignoring. Basically, long story short, how do you get them to acknowledge the Christian view of faith rather than their kind of secular version of it?
Get them to stop masturbating.
Probably many such cases.
I'm sorry, I hate being so crude with it, but that's just literally it.
Yeah,
actually, on that rather strange note, I have to actually go now. But Settlers not to imply anything on Chase, but it's getting close to bedtime, so I have to wind down. Thanks so much, Settlers Lament, for having me on.
Yeah, no worries. Thank you very much for joining us, and I want to wish you a happy No Distributist November, and hopefully another happy one next year.
Oh man, I already failed it.
Got one more day.
Wait, one more day. All right, see you guys.
Yeah, have a great night, man.
Good night.
Oh man, I left him on a really bad impression.
Oh, trust me, he already has a terrible impression of you.
That is indeed true.
No. I've forgotten. Oh yeah, you said stop masturbating. I think that it's different. I think just reviewing the promises of God does a lot of work in converting.
Yeah.
Just opening the Bible and here's what God says, and that means all of his promises, the promises of damnation and condemnation, but also of salvation and grace. I think that's we're talking about when will David and Stitch wake up? When will they realize this stuff? And I'm I don't know if they'll do it. I think God will. If they do wake up, it'll be God moving in them. I mean, in the spiritual sense that we're talking about. Maybe politically they can become like Dave Rubin and start agreeing with right-wing opinions because they get paid by Koch Foundation, or or they could actually have a transformation of the heart and a renewing of the mind, and follow Christ.
We were underestimating the Baptist DC over here, because he gets it. It's no one comes to me except if my Father sent him. He gets it, bro.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
it really isn't
Calvinist. So I'd hope he gets that.
Yeah. Yeah, I get it.
Yeah. But
Low
yes,
expectations.
another super chat for $2. CNM opinions on Jonathan Pajot's work on symbolism. I've barely watched any of Jonathan Pajot's stuff. I think I watched like half of one of his videos once, and I did not find it very interesting. I'm not like I'm not saying he's bad. I'm not saying that like his stuff is bad or anything, because that's very well just probably a condemnation of my own attention span. But I hear people talk about him all the time, but I have not followed him in any serious depth. I know I know Jordan Peterson recently had a roundtable with Pajot, and Bishop Barron, and a couple other people. I know some people were saying it was good and that it might be worth doing a response live stream too. So I don't know, perhaps that might happen. But I know very little about Pajot, so that's not much I can really say.
Yeah, I'm not familiar.
But yeah, so I don't know. Do we have more to talk about? Is that it? What?
We just hit 2 hours.
I mean, I could go on for another 2 hours.
Oh.
I'm loving this conversation.
Well, no, yeah, sure. I mean, I'm
Obviously-
happy to keep on going. What do you have to say?
I mean, like, I just want to keep talking, bounce something off. I don't know if I have anything on mind, but I'm like, yeah, I'm digging it. This is great.
Yeah, okay. What's your opinion on the position of creeds in the Christian church?
I mean, I think creeds are important.
Okay.
I think that they're literally foundational. I don't know if do they have some greater meaning in Catholicism that I'm not necessarily familiar with.
Oh no, I mean
believe in the
just
Holy
again,
Ghost.
some Baptists think that all creeds are unbiblical. I imagine that's not very common on the Calvinist side, but I just wanted to.
Well, I'm very new to the Calvinist side. This is a recent thing.
Okay.
This is a 2021 thing. I grew up in a Southern Baptist, Free Will Baptist like church that didn't really teach a lot of expository, like out of the Bible. But since moving up to Lynchburg, Virginia, and being a part of a very good church where they have very good teaching, and yeah, please convert to Catholicism. I got some books to read. I'll read them with hopefully an open heart and open mind, and we'll see what happens.
The patristics.
But so yeah, this like reform thing it's kind of new to me, but yeah, my understanding, like the Westminster Confession and then or creed, I guess, like that's important in Doug Wilson's. He's a Presbyterian because he was kicked out of the Southern Baptist Convention for baptizing babies, and then he was kicked out of the Presbyterian Conservative Convention for giving them communion. so he basically yeah.
Oh, you mean schism breeds more schism?
Yeah, no, I'm a huge fan of Douglas Wilson. I think he's great. He's one of the best out there. Other than being sort of a cringe libertarian when it comes to
Yeah,
economics.
it's so bad. It's so bad.
Yeah.
I just want to like shake him. I want to be like, "Hey, man."
Yeah. But other than that, he's great. He really has a lot of interesting stuff to say. And he basically has accomplished the Benedict option already in Moscow, Iowa, or
It's
Idaho,
amazing.
I think. Yeah.
Yeah, it's Idaho.
So yeah,
Canadian,
he's very based. Okay. I don't know. 21st. Do you want to grill DC here on being a Protestant?
I'm here for it. You got to back me up, Cringe Walker.
Well, I'm a traditional Lutheran, so I'm close to the
Yeah, you're
Catholics.
basically a Catholic.
No, I just
You're one of those anti.
This is a disaster. Let me go get my roommate. He's biblical studies, going to seminary.
Oh, no.
Just go ahead, face dox him. Just so
He doesn't
nice.
want. He probably doesn't want to show his face on this. No.
Don't.
He actually
He doesn't
wouldn't.
know he's getting.
He wouldn't.
Yeah,
Oh, okay, Cringe Walker. Why don't you grill DC?
What? No, I mean, I just like my problems with Calvinism stem from like the over reliance on reason. When in sin, your reason is corrupted. So why would you trust reason when the Bible explicitly says it can be corrupted the more in sin you are?
Well, we're not Gnostics here. That's why we have monasteries of just based people that avoid sinning as much as possible. It's like, oh, because of sin, we can't love people as well. Well, there's still capability to enter perfect charity through grace, and so of course there's ability to reach high thresholds of natural reason through grace.
Yeah, I've always joked that when people tell me if I believe in free will or not, I just would say like that depends on how much you believe in Jesus. Like the more sin is stripped away from you, the clearer your reason should become. So I kind of view free will almost as a gradient rather than a Boolean function. Like if you're in sin, heavily in sin, what's left of your free will anyway? Like you're just prone to your passions. But as God pulls you out of your passions and converts your soul, and clears away all your demons, corrupting your reason, you will start to see the light and gradually start to gain and attribute more free will from the source of it. And as you get more free will, you will use it to worship the God that you are seeing and granting it. And so, like, if you're not using your free will to worship God, you're probably not. You probably don't have free will. You're probably prone to your passions.
Okay, so the people that aren't overwhelmed by their passions and they avoid sin and everything, their reason is in a good state.
Decent, but not perfect. Yeah.
Yes, well, that means but you yourself have the difficulty with reason. So wouldn't that mean that your like borderline Gnostic stance on this is like?
No, I don't think I have a very good understanding of philosophy, primarily, not necessarily reason.
I see. That's why you're Lutheran.
No, I've always joked I'm anti-philosophical. I don't know half these terms. I don't care to learn them, and I'm like kind of stubborn at learning them because they just don't seem to benefit my worldview at all.
You're like
philosophical. The same reason I'm anti-art, because I suck at painting.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
Doesn't understand
Walker-
giant long Greek words, or refuses to elaborate.
Yeah.
You're like when Dave was telling like Adam, it's like I don't know if he was saying like, oh, read C.S. Lewis or whatever, and then Adam's like, no, I won't read that.
I'm
No.
actually proud that I've never ever read a single work by C.S. Lewis.
Why does that make you proud? You should
Because if I feel like I'm like a C.S. Lewis virgin, I'm just completely unattached to anything of that philosophy or theology.
But that's not a good thing though, because C.S. Lewis is awesome.
I don't know. I wouldn't know.
Yeah, clearly. This is a disaster.
Yes, C&MK for $2. Calvinism is heresy. Jesus died for all men.
Amen.
What do you have to say to that, DC?
I mean, yeah, he died as a payment for the benefit of all humans, but like that doesn't mean that all people are going to be called into grace. I mean, that's just how it is.
I mean, he died for the benefit of all humans. That doesn't sound congruent with limited atonement.
Well, to be fair, he did also say that he was newer to the Calvinist side, so maybe he's
no, sorry. I mean,
yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, I mean, I don't have to grill you on this stuff if you don't want.
No, it's okay. I mean, I think that like I'm still working through Tulip, that's for sure. I'm going to a Calvinist church. They don't really talk about it too much, to be honest. But I don't...
Yeah. I mean, one sort of disclaimer for Calvinists I want to get into is when people hear Calvinist or Reformed, what they always think of is Tulip, is the doctrines of grace. But like if you just read John Calvin, like that's a very small portion of what he talked about. Like if you read the Institutes of the Christian Religion, for example, like the first section is all just on the nature of God. It doesn't really have anything directly to do with the Calvinist view of predestination. Now, he of course does talk about that in the book in a different part. But I'm sure John Calvin would be very unhappy to learn that when most people hear of Calvinism, what they think of is one very specific slice of Calvinism.
It's okay. He was too busy burning witches.
I think John Calvin killed like 22 people.
The only reformer to actually reform people's mortality.
But CNM's question can still be salvaged in that there's still.
But yeah, I mean, do you want to provide any defense for limited atonement?
I mean, Christ, from my understanding of the doctrine, and then this is that Christ died for the sins of the elect, is what people say, right?
Yeah,
and I think that is probably a fair judgment call on Christ's behalf. Like he's kind of sovereign over all things, right? So he's sovereign over who goes to heaven, and he doesn't send people to hell. People's sins and rejection of Christ lead them to hell.
Yeah, I mean that.
That's my understanding of the doctrine.
What?
Yeah. It's I of course do not believe in limited atonement, but to give the sort of Calvinist side a fair shake, I do think the argument can be pretty powerful. Again, I think it's wrong. I don't want any misapprehension.
Don't get confused.
But with that said, sort of the really strong version of the Calvinist argument on limited atonement, is that really what is being debated here is, did Christ die to make something possible, or did Christ die to actually do something? And Calvinists would say that everyone who denies limited atonement is saying that Christ only died to make something possible. He didn't actually die for something. That according to all other views, you could have Christ be the savior of mankind, but the potential savior of mankind, but the actual savior of no one. Because what most non-Calvinists believe is something along the lines of Christ died. He made a sacrifice that was that could be applied to everyone. But that sacrifice needs to be applied in time later on for those people to actually be saved. Where according to the Calvinist understanding, according to limited atonement, it's all one discrete action. Now, of course, salvation is still applied in time, but Christ didn't die so some people might be saved. Christ died specifically to redeem and save his people, all in one act. So I think, sort of, when you put it like that, the argument can be pretty compelling that the logical absurdity of the non-Calvinist view, according to Calvinists, is that you could have Christ, who is a potential savior for everyone and an actual savior for no one. That you could, according to the non-Calvinist view, have a circumstance where Christ died for everyone, but no one ever actually chose to accept that salvation. Now, of course, there's many obvious retorts to that. The first being that even if you only assume the people who are clearly described as being saved in the Bible are actually saved, there is clearly a non-zero amount of people who are actually saved through Christ's sacrifice. But still, the point that from the Calvinist argument isn't that non-Calvinists think that Christ is actually a potential savior for everyone, but an actual savior for no one. But just point out the incoherency of that worldview. So yeah, I know I don't want to grill you too much on this stuff. And yes, as Wandering Panda is saying, this is what Calvinists would say: sufficient for all, efficient only for the elect. And I want to disavow this comment, though. Throwing that heresy word around is pretty lousy. No, heresy is denial of any dogmas of the faith. So you two here, Cringe Walker and David, you're both heretics. You both
right. We're anathema, right? Because you believe in faith alone.
Let him be anathema.
Yeah.
So
okay.
A lot coming from the bishop kicked out by the Eastern bishops.
Well, yeah. Well, and because I don't know if it's perfect to grill DC when he's just starting to imbibe some of the ideas within Calvinism. I think a much more simple question for both of you is how do you discern heresy? Because clearly there's a huge issue in terms of the salvation of all humanity if the supposed truth tellers are confused with the non-truth tellers on with these issues? How is that stamped out and persecuted and crushed?
I'll point to the works. I think I brought it up in the last debate we had about this. With like, there was a tradition in Rome to respect the different Easter dates in the East for most of the early church, and it was just like a non-formal agreement to just tolerate the differences. And then suddenly the Pope decided to call that heresy, and then all the other bishops were like, "This is probably not heresy," and so the Pope was kind of forced to rescind the heretical title. And it's like, there's a good example of like the church needlessly splitting hairs over something that like for a while was valid, but then declared not valid, kind of valid. So it's like, was it actually valid if the Pope undid it? It seems to me that like, if even the Catholic Pope didn't know for sure what was heretical or not, like, I think that's a word that, yeah, you probably shouldn't throw around too much, but there are some clear examples like denial of the creed. So, you know, although even there, like, do the Orthodox deny the creed because it was edited also? So like, are they denying the original creed? It's difficult to say, but as long as you're like subscribing to those creeds in like, you know, a way that we can determine, I think that's
yeah,
enough,
no,
right?
I agree. Of course, including the creed of the Council of Trent.
Yeah, but that wasn't a gathering of all the bishops around the world. So
Yes, it was.
yeah, your Catholic bishops, not the ones you kicked out. It's like,
How else are you gonna do it?
well, not the Democrat method.
I mean,
I'll tell you that much.
there is a like, I don't know if Martin Luther was necessarily looking to leave the church. I don't know his motivations. Perhaps he was just looking to reform it a little bit, have a conversation, you know.
He got all choleric and angry.
Question the
That was
doctrine.
He got angry. I mean, yeah, well, he
and-
probably shouldn't have burned the bull. He probably should have. Well, he did, and now that's what happens.
right.
Sorry, DC, you were saying?
Well, I'm just saying that
Fine.
like the Catholic Church is very not receptive to criticism. I think that you know I think that in my church at least we are I don't want to dox my church just because it'll be a lot easier to figure out everything about me if I do that. But there's multiple churches. It's a part of a convention, but there's we have elders. We take that very seriously. We have confessions that we hold to. We have documents that we hold to. We have standards that we hold our elders to and our pastors to. And we have standards that we hold our church congregation to pretty seriously, actually very seriously. So that's what we do. That's how we. I mean, I know someone got kicked out of the church not too long before I joined for not repenting. Really, I mean, you know, church discipline.
So instead of the Pope with his hierarchy of bishops determining, you know, when people are behaving poorly and have the wrong beliefs, you just want like this miasma of the people spitting.
Well, it's not. It's not the people. It's the church body. It's the elders. It's the pastors primarily directing this, and it's the Word of God which guide what we do. So yeah, actually, I would fall back on the Word of God.
That's
But-
a minor thing that so one of the problems I have with the Calvinist view is the refusal to submit to traditional church structures, but like at the same time, it kind of just reemerges on its own. Also, like,
yeah, our church structure seems pretty traditional to me.
no, there's no bishops, so that's
Okay, fair enough.
Okay, but also, I'm
Like,
sorry, but
I mean, define bishop. What's
yeah, that's the
bishop?
thing. Like the Presbyterians didn't want bishops, but then they ended up with bishops that they just call like presidents or whatever.
What's a
So it's-
bishop?
A bishop is an elder who has been certified by someone quote me the part, I think it's in Timothy or something. They use the Greek word for it as episcopal, but like it means bishop.
Episcopal, an elder, an overseer, or a pastor.
Well,
they're-
those are
They
different.
refer to the same office.
There's overlap, but they're different offices. A bishop is over a pastor. In the traditional way, the what would happen is that the deacons of the church would take the bishop's letters and views to the pastors or priests in the Roman Church style, and there would be a conformity to the view of the bishop elder. And each individual church would have its own elders, but they weren't bishops of that church. The bishop was overseer of multiple churches. And then the churches had elders within them, and then they communicated through the deacons. And that was like the general structure, if I remember correctly.
I think in a letter that Paul writes, he introduces it to saying to the elders and the and the overseers, or the pastors, right?
Right. Well, okay. I mean, we could get into apostolic succession. Oh man,
Succession.
Apostolic succession. But I want to just point out, like, these doctrinal differences, they're starting to get, pretty scary to me. I mean, the Eucharist in the Catholic and then Orthodox understanding is literally the flesh and blood of Christ himself, literally, and he wants to enter into your body and physically reside in you for a brief time, and you receive that grace and everything. Don't you think there's a difference there between that and then saying it's symbolic and like, oh, is this the same religious entity if we have such a crucial?
Well, yes, I acknowledge the difference, and I abide in the difference.
I'm just saying this is the problem, and like, surely there.
Yeah, I don't think anyone here is really an indifferentist. I think we all acknowledge that there's pretty big differences.
Yes, but why is there such a flimsy mechanism to determine heresy here? It's just
Stedler, how old are you? The chat demands to know.
Nice try, Fed.
Nice try.
Oh, do we not even age docs here?
Nope.
I'm 30 and I've face doxed myself multiple times here. I just don't have a camera right now.
Nah, yeah, I turned 19 in October.
We get it. You're Chad. We get it.
I'm a young lad.
I am willing to say that I'm in my 20s. So
I'm not turnip seed young, but I'm young.
Yeah, I am in my 20s, so I am older.
That it is Chad that he's like the one showing his face. He probably has the best physiognomy.
Zoomers have no fear. Zoomers
My
have
physiognomy? No, it's not the best. I'm sure you guys are good looking. I got called
actually you're wrong.
I got called an albino African American.
I can see it.
It's crazy. I have Native American in me, so
nice based. Claim to the soil based.
Savage. Yeah. It's pretty savage.
Like with the Eucharist, the Lutherans have always had the view Christ is there, literally. We're not going to explain it.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I thought the Lutheran view was pretty well explained.
It's explained pretty well as a mystery that we're not going to explain.
Yeah, I mean, my understanding of the Lutheran view is just that Christ is truly present corporally, but the substance of the bread and wine also remains. But I could be wrong.
No, that's right. Yeah. We don't like. I'm pretty sure Luther just refused to elaborate on like how it happens. It's like Luther wasn't even necessarily against the end result of transfiguration. He just refused to explain it as transfiguration because like it's a mystery.
Transubstantiation.
I was like, it's a mystery. I'm not gonna try to explain what's going on there, or if the bread's still bread or something. No, it's a mystery. Christ is present because he said he's present, and it's a mystery.
But I guess I don't know, like asking about having your sins forgiven, to asking a Calvinist about this, but it's like, and then this is for Cringewalker too. It's like if you're not going to an elder, a priest, a presbyter, if you're not going to the priest in order to confess your sins, and him say, "I absolve you," how do you know you're forgiven for your sin? It's like, yes, we can have
Christ makes a promise. That's how.
Well, I know, but what are you, like a faith alone guy, where it's like, oh, if you sin boldly but believe more boldly? Is that what it is?
No, of course not.
I think
sin boldly. What?
That's
no. I said, but believe more boldly, as in the faith alone part. Your faith is what.
Yeah,
it's a quote from Luther is what he's referring to.
Luther said
so
that.
I have heard that the authenticity of this quote is questionable. I don't know if that's true or not.
Well, Luther, that seems a little whack, Luther. Not gonna lie.
The whole point was that like when you sin, like you should be bold to like kind of like recognize the boldness of like going to God to ask forgiveness.
Yes.
Yeah,
That makes
but
sense.
I'm still saying it's like, are you both just like faith alone guys, where it's like you're gonna sin a bunch, but you believe, so it's okay.
No.
No, I mean, like
Sin.
I confess my sin to elders all
Yeah.
the time. It's like that's kind of vitally important to receive the
that's
wisdom.
sanctification, right? You have to confession of sin is absolutely necessary in being sanctified in the Word and in the Spirit.
I
But
like
to
the
who?
phrase. I learned this phrase from a
God.
Yes, but how do you know if? Well, sorry, I'm going in circles again. Like
I don't really have to know if it's
theology,
God. I
different,
just have to have.
whatever.
I don't have to know for sure if it's like I have. Yeah, it's kind of faith alone in some sense. It's like, well, I
I
said the
don't have to
word.
know for sure whether I'm forgiven for sins that are worthy of hellfire. Okay.
Well, no,
Well,
I'm assured that it's God.
Yeah.
I know for sure it's God because He assures me in the book of First John, and there's a method of knowing assurance and faith. I believe that, and I know it's God because He promises that anyone who asks, anyone who knocks, doors shall be open. I know that's might be out of context, but the theme, the ideas followed throughout the Bible, like talk to God.
Yeah, as far as I know, it's like it's. I prefer confessing to an elder. I prefer that there's like a fellow believer in faith who can keep me accountable for a sin. Like this is preferable because it's someone who I, like can come to me in the flesh and blood and like tell me stop doing that. It's like it's a pretty good confidence, honestly.
And how is it that you know that, like, you go to I don't know who you go to, a priest, a bishop, or something? You
You
confess
have to
to
go to a
them.
priest. I mean, a bishop would also
Okay,
be able to.
right. You go to a priest, and because you go to a priest, you can assume that you're confessing to God.
Oh man.
Well, I mean, yes, this is explicitly what Christ says, and in John 20,
so
21,
it's faith
23,
alone again.
whose ever sins you forgive, they are forgiven them. Whoever sins you retain, they are retained.
In John what?
John 20, 21 to 23.
Okay.
Yeah, and and also like it's pretty clear. I mean,
What I quoted there is truncated. The verses I mentioned is a bit fuller.
And then also, God dispenses His grace through natural means in many ways. That's something we can all agree on.
What's natural means?
Yeah. What?
What do you mean by natural means?
As in, you have a father and he like provides for you and feeds you and everything. That's like a natural grace, I would say.
Yeah. It's definitely. I've always
Because
viewed
nothing
it
is
like,
outside of God's grace, but
well, like
he's using clearly natural means.
When your dad tells you after you did something dumb, I'm sure we all have like a memory. Hopefully, if we have a good father, we'll have a memory of like there's a moment when we did something really dumb, but our father told us like, "Son, I forgive you," like our physical parents, and that's always like that stays with you. That has a weight to it. That's
And
the
since
confidence.
no good act that a person does, like your father chastising you, that's a good act. No good work can be done without God's grace. Therefore, it's pretty clear, right? But I don't know. Why do I keep saying I don't know? I do know.
Because you
I
don't
do
know.
believe. Yeah. Oh, I'm right.
Freudian slip. I got him destroyed. Facts and logic.
I do believe gravely that there's probably not been one other bad idea that has cast more people into hell in the modern West than the idea of Protestant assurance. That's just my opinion.
Well, yeah, admittedly, a lot of Protestants don't actually go to an elder to confess their prayer.
Protestant assurance. It's cancer.
Why?
Cringe walker, like, okay, obviously the people that are intending to confess and like do good, like you're saying DCI, so it's not just like a ridiculous caricature. We're talking about like lots of people that get a caricature version of this assurance idea and they don't really do anything about their sins and then they end up in hell.
Yeah, but that's more like
Okay,
modern.
I agree with that. Yeah, sure.
That's a very big problem.
Oh, I agree. I
Modern
think
Christians.
like this sinner's prayer thing that we do in the Protestant sects of like, just say this prayer after me, just God, I believe in you and I'm sorry and please forgive me. Oh, now you're saved. Go and be fruitful and do whatever. Oh, by the way, don't come back to this church, because at this church, we only care about how many numbers we convert by saying that prayer. Go disciple somewhere else. It's like, what are you doing? You're sending people straight to hell. That's
those are
that's not what that is. That's terrible.
So you're gonna determine the idea, the drawing line here of what's sending people to hell or not now. Oh, I see.
Well,
Magisterium, AC/DC.
Yes.
You are confusing people. Yeah, and you're misleading people. Yeah, and you are allowing them to wallow in sin, thinking that they're assured, and as a result,
that's right, DC.
People that can be saved are not being saved. Yes,
that's right, DC. You are confusing people. You are making people think, well, in their sin, it's okay.
No, actually, 21st minion, 21st century reactor, whatever. You're confusing people. How's that make you feel? Huh? Tables have turned. Tables have turned now.
The dogma lives loudly within this one.
If Stella's already,
that's what makes us based.
If Stella's already up to his 21st minion, what happened to the other 20?
Yeah,
just so you know, DC, it's a reference to what Dianne Feinstein said to Amy Coney Barrett.
Oh yeah,
it was in her circuit court approval, not her Supreme Court, before she, she's about to rubber stamp abortion, isn't she?
Yeah, we'll see how that Missouri case goes or whatever, Mississippi. I'm not looking forward to it. But anyways, yeah, I mean, I think I zoned out for a lot of that because I was reading some stuff. But anyways, what were we talking about?
Yes, we both agree that you are causing confusion and allowing people to wallow in their sin.
No, I actually think we both agree that you are causing confusion.
That's why I said we agree that you are causing confusion.
You've reduced yourselves to the classic debate tactic of blame it on the other guy.
Actually, Wondering Panda, I don't think I am going to start struggling with Protestantism. This has been an enlightening conversation that has given me questions, but I think they'll be resolved. I'm not very.
Well, I think you should read the early church fathers called the patristics. You should read them.
But be sure to read them without the Catholics censoring out all the anti-Rome stuff.
Ooh,
no.
Oh, it's true. It's real.
Yeah, the Catholics love to go with I think it's Irenaeus or Ignatius to the Romans. Who's the one who did the Romans?
Seller, are you here for this?
Yeah, I'm here. I mean, Ignatius to the Romans. That's not really like a central epistle in dealing with the papacy.
Yeah. A lot of people like to point out all the special praises to Rome, but then they ignore when he gives the same praises to the other Eastern churches.
Okay, but nonetheless,
I mean the way that Ignatius talks. I mean, I did just say that Ignatius's epistle to the Romans isn't really the central one with dealing with the papacy. I mean, it's relevant, but it's not really like the main document. But the way he describes the Roman Church is clearly different from how he describes the Eastern churches.
Him describing, I think it's Ephesians and Philippians are two other churches he gives greetings to.
Hey, whoa, we're talking to Catholics. Stop referencing the Bible.
No, this is the Bible.
I'm joking.
This is patristic writers.
Frick!
Well, there's a lot of interesting details in terms of they do present Rome as an elevated elder church, but it seems to be because it's mentioned in the scriptures.
Okay, but also none of their theology.
Well, I mean, the Ephesian church is mentioned in the scriptures.
What?
The Ephesian church is mentioned in the scriptures.
Yeah, he also gives a special greeting to them too, and the Philippians too.
Right, but the point is that
he does not. He uses special language for the Roman Church that's unambiguous. He says that the Roman Church presides in love.
Yeah, so he says the same. I think he says the same thing to the Philippian Church too.
Wait, what's the big deal if the Roman Church presides in love?
First amongst the traits. Sorry. Never mind. I'll shut up.
Holds the first place in love.
Holds the first place in love. Okay.
Like presidency in love, another way to describe it. No, I'm not like I certainly would not say that Ignatius alone proves the papacy or anything. It's just an early witness that shows that he.
Sorry.
That sounded bad.
Did something break?
Yeah, something definitely just broke.
No, nothing broke. Oh, that's
Really?
amazing.
Okay,
Oh,
good.
good.
But yeah, no, I certainly would not say Ignatius by itself proves the papacy. I mean, I would say Ignatius debunks Protestantism, but for different
Debunk.
reasons.
Oh, I broke my teapot handle. Oh,
Oh, you did
Yikes.
break something.
it's okay. It's been breaking off before.
But no, I'm. Which church did you say he says the same thing about love to?
He doesn't say. I think he says something. Let me look it up. I think it was Philippians where he gives I don't know if it was the word love, but he gives like the first in like something other regard.
I mean, yes, I know he gives like introductions to the other churches. That's not controversial. All I'm saying is the language he uses with Rome is unique.
I've been I've been sitting on the floor for about an hour, so I'm gonna get up and try to find this now.
Okay, but DC, regardless of is the Rome the ones that the patristics held in high esteem, all of their theology and moral beliefs, it's not Calvinist.
I would say, as DC referenced earlier, I gave him a couple of books that I suggested he read if he wanted to know about Catholicism. I would suggest he reads those before he really gets into these things. Those books aren't really focused on patristics specifically. But I mean, if you're interested in patristics, my recommendation is always just read the earliest fathers: Ignatius, Irenaeus, Clement, Polycarp. I need to write up a list. I need to have like a blog or something that I can have a list of.
Ooh, a blog.
I have a convenient PDF that I had for the last.
You're a
debate.
Lutheran. No one respects your opinion.
Just like the really early figures, Justin Martyr, like the figures within like 50 years of John's death. Some of them are even earlier. Some of them are when the apostles were alive.
I mean, but my thing is though, in the Bible we see people that are alive in the time of Paul, and they're wrong. So 50 years down the line, why can't other people be wrong?
I mean, all I'm saying is, I think if you read these early figures, could be interesting. Not,
I kind of fear that a lot of people might put these first century figures on the same level as the Bible. Which,
well, the thing is, the thing
whether
is,
that be an actual thought, like I know you guys probably don't do that,
as a Protestant,
but in effect, that's what people do, and that's probably something you should avoid.
The problem is that at that time, the New Testament hadn't been written yet, so they only had the patristics. It took a while to get those books finally assembled. There's this book I want to
determine which ones are divinely inspired.
Yeah.
In an authoritative council, of a hierarchy.
I don't think they decided in a council. I think there was just like this series of lists that different patristics did.
Well, there was the two councils of Carthage and the Council of Rome, presided over by Saint Augustine. In the early 400s. Those all dealt with the issue of the canon.
Was it the canon?
I mean, at that point, the canon was mostly already settled, so it was the arriving at the canon was mostly something done through sort of consensus of the church, but it was sort of ratified at a council eventually.
Yeah. Difference. The key there being ratified versus debated. It kind of been already settled by then, but even then, there were always debates about some of those books.
You need a formal ratification of something, and okay, whatever. It's beside
a what?
He's saying, it doesn't matter. It was already settled in the debating, but the formal ratification is there the rubber stamp isn't just pointless. It's to say this is the authoritative final conclusion. So the ratification is the essential.
Well, if it was the authoritative final conclusion, why did they need 3?
Oh, well, I mean, those were local councils, so local councils aren't infallible themselves.
Question. Are councils infallible? I mean, why are the councils infallible? What's the logic?
Well, there have been.
What's the thought behind that? No, of course not.
Because Christ said to the Apostolic College in Matthew 16 and 18 that whatever you bind on earth shall be bound in heaven.
Yeah, there's a pretty rich tradition that the councils had to be respected because it was when Christianity was still united. At least those first councils, the what do they call them?
But no, I mean, I was
ecumenical councils.
I was saying that the local councils are not infallible. Only ecumenical councils are considered infallible by Catholics. So those councils I'm citing are not ecumenical councils.
We're getting deeply into autism here, Mr. Carlson.
You see, DC, whenever, it's like, oh, well, how do you know the ecumenical councils are authoritative? Protestants go down this slippery slope, and eventually you say, well, how do we know every single aspect of the Bible was divinely inspired? And then, oh, how have we know that's infallible? And then they start, having piercings and blue hair. And become SJWs.
So true. Okay, I got a few more.
Yeah, I've never heard of a progressive Catholic. Those don't exist.
No, that's.
Yeah, I know. I'm just messing with.
Technically, they don't exist because they're going to hell anyway. So.
Okay, but anyway,
you said it,
okay,
not me.
I got a few super chats. Shut up.
We need to talk about those.
Shut up.
Money comes first.
Yes. Hot fish flakes for $5. So if a Catholic dies without absolution, he goes to hell because he can't his
Confess.
sins direct to God. If this is true, I'm happy to be a Lutheran. I mean, no. In short, no. That's not accurate. Trent explicitly teaches that the sacraments can be received through desire. And often, like trads, especially State of AntiProgressivists, will claim that the concept of baptism of desire is like some weird modernist Vatican II innovation. It is completely untrue. It's explicitly taught in Trent. So in particular, the relevance for this would be both baptism of desire, confession by desire. If you die as a Catholic, intending to confess your sins, but you're unable to, then you would receive the grace of the sacrament through desire, so you would still go to heaven. It would only be the obstinate denial of the sacrament that would damn you. So yeah, I mean, I suppose that this is what autistic State of AntiProgressiv groups like Most Holy Family Monastery believe. They believe what you're describing, but that's not what the Council of Trent or the Catholic Church teaches.
But the smoking gun. What? The smoking gun was, if this is true, I'm happy to be a Lutheran. Bro, don't be happy to have false beliefs. That means you'd still go to hell, bro. And also, don't be prideful, man. This isn't about your own comfort with the truth.
Progressive prots be like, God's pronouns are he, him. I would be very happy if progressive prots did stick to God's preferred pronouns.
Yeah.
Or
His pronouns are I
in general.
am.
Hey.
Because it's I don't want to say it's just a Protestant thing because I'm sure there's some progressive Catholics who do the same thing, but yeah, I've definitely seen progressive Christians that want to refer to God as a woman or want to use all sorts of weird language to refer to God. So
tragically, many of them are ELCA Lutherans.
Yeah. I remember you showed me like the Church of the Goddess or something once.
Yes, that's unfortunately a registered ELCA church, and it's exactly why it is cursed. It's why so many traditional Lutheran churches have broken off to form their own denominations.
Wow, it's almost like schisms cause.
Yes.
Yeah, DC.
He froze.
Yeah, DC. I think you're freezing. I want to end this here now, though. I want to keep on going. So I don't know. Subscribe to Settlers Lament. Give me money. Hopefully I'll start doing live streams weekly again and I'll make videos. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, submit to the Pope. Accept
Did you guys
Christ.
hear what I said? I'm sorry.
You died out.
Froze
You died.
there. I'm just doing shilling now. We're closing off the live stream.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, I'm just saying about like the Lutheran Church, like people leaving that, like, yeah, schisms cause schisms, but some schisms are justified.
Yeah.
No, Zero Kev. I want to do some. I want to do some videos. It's just live streams are easier. That's why I do so many live streams now.
And you get more money.
Yeah, it's true.
Trust me, I know. I'm monetized now.
Hey.
Yeah, very based. But no, I mean it's mainly just because it's easier. So
Easier.
yeah. And yes, I do have to point this out. Schism is never justified. You are literally doing violence to the body of Christ by schisming. If the church is his body.
What if someone kicks you out?
There's probably a reason for being.
Yeah,
Luther officially never left the church. He was booted out when he burned up the bull.
He was rightly punished. But yes, everyone go to church. Stop not going to church. Pray. That's it. Who wants to shill?
I'll shill.
Stop showing off your muscles.
I'm not.
You look like Judge Schroeder there for a second.
There is another. Who's that?
That's the Kyle guy, the Kyle judge, who's like flexing and reading cookie magazines through the whole trial.
There's another. I'm gonna be honest. It's just like my armpits are sweaty. There's another super chat there. If you want to read that before I start shilling.
I like this super chat a lot.
Sorry, I was eating. Mott Flish Fakes for another $5. I grew up ELCA. The ELCA isn't Lutheran; it's the Democrat Party at prayer.
Got him, roasted.
Got him. Strong agree.
I mean, yeah, okay. Here's what I got going on. I work for the Populist Union, which is a 501c4. I am the CCO, which is the Chief Content Officer. That's at Populist Union on Twitter. I know you guys aren't. I use the term populist very loosely. And we have a YouTube channel. We make bi-weekly content. We have interviews. We're going to be doing an interview with Wendy Rogers, who is a state senator from Arizona, tomorrow. I'm excited for that because she has like 300,000 followers on Twitter. So that will hopefully help us out a lot. We're doing Pedro Gonzalez is going to, well, I probably shouldn't have said that. He might be on. And there's some other people we're talking to that might be on, have a conversation with. We make kind of educational content and participate in some form of institution building and activism, networking a lot. So yeah, you guys should check that out. I have the DC Perspective YouTube channel, link in the description. So you should check that out as well. I want to make more videos, but it's been a while since I've even thought of it. So good stuff. Thank you.
Very based. Yeah, no worries. 21st.
I am a reactionary. I don't know. I just make little videos. That's all.
Oh,
you don't have any devotions you want to shill?
Obviously, the 9 First Fridays and the 5 First Saturdays. Let's get real with that. And
wait, what is that?
Wearing where you receive communion 9 consecutive, so like 9 consecutive months, the first Friday of each month. He offers it's a devotion where he offers several very powerful graces. And then 5 First Fridays is 5 First Saturdays is for like Mary's Immaculate Heart and similar powerful graces around that, receiving communion. Then do those, guys. First of all, you have to become Catholic to do it. But yeah, that's it.
No loss there.
I always have to point out that technically, as I was raised and confirmed in the Catholic Church and never formally left, I could technically do them.
Okay. Yeah, you'd need to go to confession first. But do you have anything to shill, Cringe Walker?
I'm still shilling that video I made a while back. I have been meaning to do, and I'm about like maybe a third of the way through a Substack post / video on the Magi, because I was during AA's Evola Day. I wanted to do a Christian response to Evola's like mysticism. The Magi fascinate me because they somehow knew Jesus was going to come by, and I had the luck of actually knowing a Magi in real life who explained to me the specific constellations they used to determine Christ's birth. And to this day, I'm still fascinated that you can literally like go up to NASA's star maps and see that this was actually what the stars looked like in Christ's birth, and see how it determined the birth of Christ. Basically, the Virgo, the Virgin, had Jupiter, the king planet, in the womb region for 9 months, and pretty powerful sign that a king's going to be born, and then it headed towards Jerusalem. And if you're a magi in the year 0, it looks like, hey, a king's getting born. Let's go there and go find it. And the fact that this is like documented in like NASA's like prehistory maps of stars, or ancient history maps of stars, just fascinates me. It's like this is like science confirming gospel. So I want to do a little Substack post that as a bit of a Christian alternative to Evola's bullshit on magic.
Oh, base.
And also I've been meaning to want to write about the Magi and stuff about them for a while now, because there's a lot of interesting things you can extract from some of those wisdom texts that maybe get lost on if you're not like aware of the culture. So yeah, for now, Substack is luthenite.substack.com, and my YouTube channel, I'm sure it's linked somewhere. Seller put it in the whatever.
Yep, your YouTube channel is in the description. Thank you everyone for being here. Become Catholic, accept Christ, submit to the Pope. Goodbye, everyone.